So, welcome everybody to the Four Horsemen. Obviously, this is going to be a pretty wild ride for everybody. Just so you guys know how this works, this show only exists in reaction to things that happen, drama, news, that happens in the esports industry. Not always going to be about League of Legends, although League of Legends does provide many of these things over time and did provide the fodder for this first episode, obviously. Now, what happens is we do a summoning on Twitter, so you guys have to give us the retweets in order for the show to start. The show won't start until we hit a retweet target and the summoning is complete. If we don't hit that target, it clearly wasn't important enough and we don't do a show. So we don't know how often this show is going to happen. We don't know what days it's going to happen. We don't know what time it's going to happen. But here we are. You can follow this channel. It will be here on Insight in Esports. And finally, Thorin, Richard, and I have gotten together to do something. And I think that we will offer some very unique opinions on region locking today, probably ones that you will not expect. I think all of us come into this with extensive experience in region locking from things like StarCraft, Overwatch League, other entities that have existed with region locking and without region locking in the past.
Everyone's fucking region locked at the moment in Counter-Strike because of the fucking
of
pandemic.
Course. I mean, everybody is... Region locking is just necessary now in every esport because of the pandemic, which is interesting in and of itself. Joining us...
Boris Johnson just told me I'm fucking region locked until June. So,
it's kind of rich, isn't it? All those Americans didn't want anyone coming last year. Now they're all fucking begging for us. What is this? Just make your mind up, for fuck's sake.
And yes, when this goes onto YouTube, it will be on the Insight on Esports YouTube. I will make a separate Spotify account and podcast account. You can follow us on Twitter for that. Joining us today is our fourth horseman. So how this works is that every time we have a show, we will get a guest horseman. Today it's Danan, who is the general manager of the Golden Guardians. And why we're doing this is because we like to have expert perspectives, and because Danan has been a part of these conversations, obviously, is one of the GMs of an LCS team, and we'll bring that perspective and kind of where he thinks the other teams are landing on this, and we can have a more diverse discussion here, as it were, depending on everyone's opinions. And I actually don't know Richard and Thorin's opinions on this, so this is going to be very interesting for all of us, I'm sure. So welcome, Danan.
Was it implied that Danan might also be here because he's going to like argue in favor of some of the current things? Was that even an implication? Did he try and set the table based on what you thought people thought?
He didn't really ask, honestly. You guys are going to be surprised probably when you start hearing my perspective, because I'm probably in a completely different area.
Just wondered.
Yeah. And obviously, the other thing that happened here is why this show got started on this particular topic is Richard messaged us last week. He's like, hey, do you think this region locking conversation is it good for a Four Horsemen show? I'm like, I don't know, man. We've had this conversation a million times before. It just seems like a different iteration of it. And then what happens is the owners started saying things on Reddit and Twitter, and it got real stupid real fast. And then we knew.
What happened is the Kanye West of esports, Reggie, tweeted out, broke the motherfucking Matrix again, didn't he? And now we all have to talk about what he's talking about. He's just Kanye, apparently. So there we go. That's this week.
It was so dumb that it actually necessitated this show so that we could, because the problem, guys, is that the reason why this show exists is to have a more in-depth conversation, an intelligent conversation on these topics. So when things start to get stupid, the Four Horsemen must come and set things right, is how it's going to go. So
here's how I'd describe Monty when Reggie does a tweet on industry stuff. It's like that moment when you're in a nightclub, right? And you've had a few drinks, things are going awesome, you've got a good vibe, the music, and then you know when they just shut the music off because it's time to close the club down, they pull those lights up, and it doesn't matter how drunk you are, you instantly feel like stone sober, like holy fuck, what am I doing with my life? You have like a moment of clarity. That's what I get when Reggie tweets, because when he tweets, I sometimes go, it's almost like you don't have to tweet every thought you have. And then I go, whoa, fucking hell. And then I go back into my, I go back into my own reality and just keep going on. Just do it anyway. He almost makes me see myself from the outside, but not quite.
Is Reggie that active on Twitter recently? I'm honestly not
usually. That's what's bizarre. You only really seem to
do
this,
that's why it stood out to me.
Like lashing out. Doesn't he usually do like pretty infrequent tweets? It's usually just some crap like GG, well played or something, isn't it?
Yeah, for the most part. I think there's obviously some banter probably between him and Jack whenever they play, but otherwise it's pretty low key. This was just kind of randomly thrown in. Honestly, my guess is this was actually a reaction to probably the criticism levied against Jack. Jack went on Reddit at some point in response to, I'm not sure if you guys caught, there's like 10 Twitter videos that Travis put together, one from every single owner rep in the league, or at every GM. Basically, we did like little press conferences this week for the first time. And he took
That's how you know
snippets of each
civilization
one.
might actually be ending in 2021, because Travis Gafford has started doing journalism. So if that's not a fucking harbinger of impending doom, I don't know what the fuck is.
I'm amazed he even had time. I thought he was locked away in that massive room with like 58 TV monitors, just watching in case anyone fucking like, oh, there's a slight heat signature outside the fucking storm drain of a TSM mansion. Is that human? Like, this motherfucker's like some sort of like fucking honorary Stasi member. What's he doing? What is this? Gone too far, Travis. Shut it down, mate. Go back to the Doublelift interviews. You know what? Who knew that happened, Richard? Travis, just bring him back, mate. I want to know what Doublelift thinks now. You know, I think that's your wheelhouse, mate. Just stay in there. That's in the batting cage. You're just swinging and hitting all day long. Real pitches. They can get dodgy, mate. The sliders and everything.
So kind of surprised Doublelift isn't like a Travis Gafford Industries lead correspondent at this point, right? The second he steps into the content limelight, you just assume he's gonna use him for everything.
Who knows? Who knows? All right, so let's get started here. Let's set the table first off, because this has been an issue that has been going on for a long time. And for those of you who, I imagine we're probably going to get many crossover esports audience people throughout the lifetime of this show. And we're going to try and pick topics that, while this is particularly relevant to the LCS and League of Legends right now, this is kind of a conversation that has happened many times across many esports and will happen continuously again in the future without a shadow of a doubt. So for those of you who may not know League of Legends, let's talk about what's happening. So currently in the game League of Legends, we have all these different regions, North America, Europe, China, Turkey, Korea, Brazil. Now, each of these leagues has a region lock, which means that there cannot be more than 2 players on every team that can play in a game that are not residents of that region. Now, resident could be a citizen of a North American, for example, country, Canada, the United States, Mexico, or it could be somebody who has a green card, a legal residency status within that region, which is oftentimes in League of Legends, it's mostly people with green cards in America. It's not really people with residency in Europe or China or Korea, which are the other major regions. So if you've been in the U.S. long enough and you are a legal U.S. resident, then you may, in fact, play without counting as an import. Now, why is this important? Well, to put it frankly, North American players suck at League of Legends. This is a big problem for LCS teams, because that means that to compete at an international level, they have to do imports. So some of the best teams in League of Legends right now, such as Team Liquid, feature 4 imported players because several of their players have green card or residency status right now.
There's one piece of context you forgot there, though, which isn't just that they suck, because listen, mate, Brazil's players fucking suck in League of Legends too. They don't have any problem with this. The other problem is they suck, but the owners have an enormous amount of resources. That's
Correct.
The problem. It's the two at the same time, because the real problem is, right, in Europe, in theory, similar levels of money, not quite as much. You just don't need to import. You got all the players, therefore you don't do the imports. Like, in theory, in China, they only did it because Koreans were better. Like, basically, it has to be like the meeting of the two. Because the real debate, as far as I can tell here, is like, I think the owners are just like low-key saying, like, why can't we win just because we have to have North American players? Like, they just want to be able to buy anyone,
Yes. And that is
I think that's the motivating factor, yeah.
And that is a very North American sports mentality, right? North American sports owners are used to being able to buy any player in the world to come compete in the NBA or the NHL, or, I mean, not the NFL, because those people are all American anyway. But these are baseball, these kind of sports, and for me, it's also interesting because recently the LCS is allowed to treat players from Australia and New Zealand as non-import players, as resident players, even though they don't have that residency. So actually the pool of players has opened up even further for LCS players, which I agreed with at the time. But there's a lot of fundamental issues here. So Thorin, why don't you kick off the conversation about region, as the historian, region locking in esports and the effects that it's had not only on League, but on other games as well.
Sure. I mean, at some point, because I'm assuming we're also going to, draw more general concepts about like economies and the way the world works. One thing, actually, at some point, I hope we bring up is that people might think there's no sports precedent here, because as you said, Monty, like in American sports, typically you can just buy wherever you want, and then in the other, it's the similar scenarios in like League of Legends. Is in a lot of scenarios, why would you need to import people? There's already going to be people in your country, but people might not know. Actually, European soccer, football, was actually a sport that heavily used import rules. Like famously, one of the leagues I remember, I'm sure Richard could talk to it, was La Liga, the Spanish league. You could only have a couple of players who were foreign players. So, for example, when legendary players like fucking Maradona and stuff and players that were around, like you had basically like 2 of these players as far as I know, and it would be quite similar to like how they do it in LCS now. Like you obviously go for your star positions there. You don't just take some like left back defender who's just okay and have him be the import. You have it be the striker or something. So it's not like it's a topic that is only unique to esports, but obviously esports is the area where, to tie back into what I was saying there, Monty, contextually, the reason I think it exists in esports, let's be real, I'll just cut through all the bullshit. It's when a North American can't win at the game, but he has all the money to buy someone who can win at the game. That's when the problems always arise. Because you know what? No one really was crying, actually, Monty, for WCS Europe. Like, oh, these Koreans are killing us. Like, you know what? That's some pretty good fucking players in Europe. North American WCS would have been wiped out. So if people don't know, when Blizzard, who were basically the first game dev to actually, like, overall implement, like, the tournament circuit, they were actually similar time with WCS as with LCS in terms of like when they did the region version, but they had like a season 2 version in 2012 as well. Essentially, when they did this tournament, they were the first ones to make it where, similar to like what Monty says, you had to have like actual residency status to play in WCS North America. So famously, for example, like J-Dog and Polt, I think it was, were able to play the North American one because they had like green cards from EG and whoever else.
Yep.
I can't actually remember who Polt was playing for at the time. And then, so basically, it immediately limited the number of Koreans who could play, because in that game, it was actually the opposite in that one. That was actually to keep people out of the region, just Koreans, because the fear was Koreans were just far and away the best in StarCraft. So if you don't keep them out, there will just only be Koreans in the tournament, which isn't necessarily totally implausible. Because if people don't know, the year before they did the region locking, they had the BlizzCon World Finals. There were 16 players, and one player was not Korean. It was my mate Naniwa, and he just went out immediately in the first round because he had to play the best Korean. So like, I get that. Basically, this is one of the topics that I'm sure I'll keep open-ended here for this discussion. In my opinion, the discussion goes like this: a general principle of like, where should you be allowed to work? Should we like limit these things? Like specific to League of Legends, like NA, what's their situation? But then also like the broader topic of, in my opinion, you've got to also have like, where do you come down on this, like, philosophically? It can't just be like, oh, I don't like TSM, therefore they shouldn't be allowed more play. No, like, the logic has to, like, apply to all three, in my opinion. So there's a lot of areas we can go with this, in my opinion. And like, StarCraft's the big one, basically.
And it has to be noted, too, because we're dealing with people here in this conversation who have been a part of many esports for, 1 to 2 decades. This region locking is an aberration in esports, okay? It is a recent thing compared to the history of esports, and most esports do not engage in region locking. So from my perspective, it's weird to even have region locking in the first place, and I imagine it's the same with you, right, Richard?
For me, I coming from a mainstream sports background and having done like sports reporting as well, I always thought that, this concept of like region locking and like limiting foreign talent into a league, for me, it's one of those things where it makes sense, I think, in the regards that you have conflicting interests at all level of sports. So you have like an umbrella organization that is in charge of all sports in a country. Then you have leagues. The leagues have stakeholders that buy into the league. And as a result, if anyone has like a financial disparity, if one club is wealthier than the other, what you start seeing is that club is like, if there are no rules imposed, then the club with the money has all the talent, and you end up with these, unbreakable dynasties. And so a lot of what league structures are set up to do is to prevent concentration of talent. It's like the NFL with the draft system, right? You finish at the bottom, we give you the first pick in the college draft. So you get the great young prospect, and at the absolute worst case scenario, you either get a player that you can build around, or you get somebody that when you eventually trade him off, it's going to give you some salary options for your, wage cap and stuff like that. So, I mean, for me, when I came into esports, I was like, I suppose we don't have to, we can break from tradition and we don't have to do what mainstream sports does. But the problem you start seeing is the exact same problem that happens in all sports. And it's not just an American problem, although I will add, American arrogance combined with American money creates its own set of headaches in every fucking sport since time immemorial, right? You know, there's no getting away. I mean, as a European, you just have to fucking roll your eyes. But the reality is, I think you know, it's actually I like the idea of limiting talent. I don't like region locking in tournaments. I think tournaments become special when people all travel from all over the world, and you'll see Americans play against Koreans, playing against Chinese, playing against Europeans. Fantastic. Love all of that. But when it comes to what we're going to talk about and segue into a little bit, which is limiting talent and limiting imports, I think that has become an absolute necessity to prevent the haves running away from the have-nots. So it's been an eye-opener for me. It's like what Blizzard did in WCS was an unmitigated disaster in terms of cordoning off all the talent. There was many people who told them that this wasn't going to fix the fundamental problems that you had and that they were staring into the abyss in StarCraft 2 over. Even if it would have, they did it too late anyway, because it's Activision Blizzard. They never do anything in a timely fashion. But I think basically what you end up with is a snowball effect. If you cordon off a region and they don't compete against the regions that are the best, they fall further and further behind because those regions already have the best to practice against, and you create this disparity, and then that creates the need to import talent, which then has an impacting effect if you don't develop talent in your region. So you have to be very careful about how you implement these things, and of course, no one's careful about anything in esports because it's run by morons.
That's true. And Danan, I think it's really interesting to have you on this show because your organization, Golden Guardians, was very successful last year at developing talent within the LCS, and you were in an unfortunate financial situation where you had to sell most of those players because of the pandemic and the way that it affected your parent organization. But you're also coming from the traditional sports background because Golden Guardians is in fact owned by the NBA team, the Golden State Warriors. So I'm sure that now NBA is a very interesting system because it's kind of halfway between the NFL, where there's a salary cap, and Major League Baseball, which is just totally spend as much money as you like, right? And you can be a super team. NBA has a luxury tax where you can exceed the cap, but it's much more expensive. So teams are, I would say, discouraged from doing that most of the time. So from your end, where are you standing on like region locking? Because you've actually been successful in ways many teams have not, which has been developing North American players.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's been interesting about Golden Guardians, at least for our problem solving, was trying to recognize how to kind of play within the restrictions that we have. I think one of the issues, and it's something I want to talk about when we get a chance here, is what we've done grandfathering imports the way we did. I'm not fundamentally against or for the restrictions either way. I actually think it's a bigger question of like, what's the principal idea of how you want to grow the league? What are you trying to do? Obviously that includes the owners and the league. Everyone has to be on the same page for that, and clearly right now they're not. But for me specifically, I've been kind of challenged when I'm building rosters to work within the awkward restriction that there's like some players that are exceptions, some that aren't. And obviously when we're talking, inevitably we're going to get to the salary inflation. We're going to probably talk Immortals. We're probably going to talk, especially this big off season, working around players that you can or can't get access to. The have or have nots, as you've already put it, is honestly the crux of my issue the entire time.
And I think that where this is coming from, I mean, it's interesting that it's coming from Reggie and Jack, who are less affected as TSM and Cloud9 by some of the problems within the structure, because they are the haves in this case. And to describe to people who don't know, what happens when you're a GM in the LCS is there are certain players who are residents whose salaries get crazy inflated because they don't count against your import limit, right? And there are players who were grandfathered in when they created this rule who didn't have to have green cards. They were just in the LCS prior to them instituting region locking. So what ends up happening is that anytime you make a move as a GM in the LCS, it's dependent on the dominoes falling in a certain way, because you have to kind of fill your non-import slots before you fill your import slots a lot of the time. So you're like trying to put the puzzle together in a very strange way. And one player can actually hold up like 5 teams signing rosters. And I hear about this every offseason from the team owners and managers. Oh, this person needs to sign to a team before 6 other deals can happen. Right, which is normal in sports, but the bottleneck is really severe in League of Legends right now for that reason.
Yep, I mean, last offseason, everyone was holding their breath for Bjergsen, obviously, who's the most famous resident import we have. And then this last offseason was another situation where I can imagine, 6+ out of the 10, more than half of the league holding their breath, querying whether Jensen's going to see free agency, right? Another resident import. Simultaneously impact like this offseason, if anything, was probably the biggest example of how much pressure can be put on everybody when you're trying to like work within these restrictions, and there's not a lot of flexibility and a lot of wiggle room. And obviously that's what's ultimately, in my opinion, pressuring where we're at right now.
I think that's actually the part that's also whack about this discussion, unfortunately, is it becomes too specific to League of Legends, because what they haven't done is either of the two obvious extremes. You either just say everyone's allowed, buy anyone you want, or you say
pick a
nobody's
side.
allowed.
Yes.
Nobody's allowed, you have to be from North America. Instead, what they did stupidly is not only did they make some weird middle ground where you can sort of become a North American within a couple of years, but even worse, as Danan said here, instead of just saying, right, we're doing this system from today, and everyone who gets to X number of years, no, they just said, from today when we started, we're just gonna let a bunch of you skip the queue. Bjergsen, you're in already, mate. You're already a North American now. Like after, I think he played something ridiculous, like a year or 2 less than I think like Hooney before he got his status. Because remember, Hooney only arrived in like season 6 to North America, wasn't it? Only came recently. So as a result, you've got this bizarre scenario, which is never talked about, by the way, which is everyone at the moment talks like this. Oh, but if you let everyone recruit everyone, they'll just recruit 5 Koreans. There'll be no North Americans. And then they go, or you'd have to make it just North Americans. What we don't talk about is we're not just increasing the value of the North Americans. We're making this bizarre, fucked up like subclass of North Americans who are actually just like Europeans, Koreans, and Chinese people who don't play in their region, who if they stay long enough, even though their actual level of play will almost certainly degrade over time because no one has like a 20-year career, they will actually get more valuable as their skill degrades. And in fact, that's the maddest part. I'm not even arguing should Golden Glue be allowed to play. I'm arguing should Phoenix be allowed to play instead of Golden Glue because he played 3 years long. Like that's where the whole thing to me just gets lost completely in like this, the like specifics. Because what I like about this discussion is more like sort of the philosophical angle. Like for example, I'll give you a teaser right now. I won't go into my whole spiel, but basically, I'm actually not in favor of region locks just because I like think about what my philosophy is as somebody who follows esports. I just like to watch the best players play in the best matches and have the highest quality game. Like I don't actually think it's a human right to be able to play video games professionally. Like I believe it's a privilege, and if you can get that gig, great. If you can't, sorry. I hope there's a real job for you in the world.
Well, I think it's. I'll jump on that perspective and say
Let's do it.
It is funny to be critical of the idea and say like the region, I don't know, is going to lose its identity or something. Obviously, the country itself was built on immigrants, and if you haven't looked at the current skew of the league, at this point, I'm pretty sure Americans and Canadians are the minority, and that's ignoring the concept of when you say North America, you're supposed to include Mexico, but like we've wrapped them out due to LLA and like our region setups.
Sure.
It's definitely weird. Obviously, with Australia joining as well as the rest of the oceanic region, like that's obviously further complicated it. But I think if you were to say like, oh, right now there's like this overwhelming terror that tomorrow there just isn't going to be any real identity to our region, I'd be like, aren't we kind of like that's what the grandfathered system is already kind of doing? We automatically brought in like 6 players. We've done like another 10 or 15 over the last couple of years. We never just ultimately picked a side. We never said, okay, this is how we're restricting. This is what's going to happen. We kept trying to find this like happy middle ground, which is fair, right? They're trying to appeal to all the parties. But as you can tell, unfortunately, it hasn't worked. Like I don't think anyone is like super thrilled with the current system, fans included. I think obviously they're going to argue the other direction, but when you see how they respond to the results, they clearly disagree.
Yeah, and I think what's being lost here too in this discussion is the first thing that comes to mind is that when we talk about region locking, it's not that it would only be LCS that would be unlocked, right? That would be unfair to all of the other regions. So really the conversation is not about should LCS have no region restrictions. Riot would never make that decision just for LCS. it would be, should all regions be unlocked? Because that's the only
The joke
way.
is, TSM, because obviously they don't think these things through, inadvertently in asking for regions to be unlocked will probably mean a Chinese billionaire buys like the best Korean team and then just wins Worlds. So.
and that's where I was going to jump in, because this is when you really start to identify the fundamental problem specific to this League of Legends thing. Not many other team owners are as stupid as Reginald has been, and Jack to a lesser degree. You know, in the sense that if you ask for the rules to be changed and they have to be universally applied, well, why do you think a region that's already or an org that already has more money than you won't outspend you if you want to make it a spending contest?
Can I preempt this really quickly?
Yeah.
Sorry, this is something I've been wanting to jump on because a lot of people have been pointing out, obviously, like we're just going to get run over by China. I'm curious, do you guys think, honestly, that we would just see the best talent go to China, that's been my long-term concern. I'm concerned about the idea that LPL becomes the NFL, MLB equivalent for League of Legends, and that's where all the top, even staff, myself, have to go when we start looking at like how do you elevate the game. But I'm curious, are you guys under the impression that they wouldn't simply go to what could be the most valuable market, which a lot of people argue is obviously North America? That's where the resources are. They're the more, I guess, the more valuable eyeballs. Couldn't they just buy TSM? Why would they import those players to China when they could just purchase TSM and bring those players here?
Yeah,
I mean, for me, yeah, like my thoughts on that are just this, that when you create, so let's say we do get this and we get this insane spend off between North America and China, that's essentially what it would come down to. Those are the markets. It's not that South Korea aren't in the equation. It's just not how they.
There are some Korean teams, like T1 is owned by Comcast. So, you know, I think there would be some teams
T1
like T1, Gen
He's really trying to lean on their Western presence, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But in general, like once you start pitching, pitting, the kind of Chinese spend, the two maybe Korean orgs that would get involved in the North American spend, what it starts coming down to is the players going out and getting those big fat contracts. And generally, I think there's a lot of players in League of Legends, especially, like if your choice is go to North America and maybe have a significant amount of cultural upheaval, or get yourself some, let's say you're already a Chinese player and it's just go to the Chinese billionaire super club and make your money there. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? And then there's a lot of people as well, if you're already an English speaker and you've already got a big following, yeah, maybe you are better off in North America. I think there's a lot of Asian players for which that's few and far between. And so as a result, my concern would just simply be Chinese dominance. Not to mention, we know when we get into pissing contests, China generally like to win them. And I think they have the will and certainly more money than a lot of these North American organizations. For me, what was essentially being said when I saw Reginald's tweets and subsequent Twitter meltdown, it was almost like they wanted an exemption. They wanted an exception, which let's be fair.
They're not thinking. I mean, they're not thinking.
Yeah, they're not thinking. Yeah, exactly. They're not thinking universally. They're thinking about their own tiny little concerns, which is generally how these guys operate. And the fact that, honestly, the big orgs in North America do get a lot of favoritism from Riot in general. So they are probably literally thinking there is some world which they can strong-arm Riot, so they get a rule that won't even apply to the Chinese teams. They probably legitimately believe that. I know Reginald believes things like that because I've talked to him. He's a guy who, despite running a successful org, he doesn't understand the ecosystem of esports. This is a guy who told ESL, yeah, but what have you ever done for esports? This guy just doesn't see big pictures at all. Like, no matter how much you point at them and go, hey, Reggie, look at that big picture over there. He doesn't get it. So I think if you bring in a rule where, hey, no, go fucking import crazy, spend as much money as you want, China absolutely wrecks everyone, yeah.
It's also true because the Chinese teams are owned by, many of them are owned by billionaires, the richest people in China. And these are toys for these people in the same way that sports franchises are toys for billionaires in America. So, outspending them on a vanity project is going to be very difficult. And I do think that there would be certain exceptions to what would happen, but there isn't a world. And, what really pisses me off about this is that the greed of these North American owners, because you guys just got Australia for free. And guess what? That's been a huge boon to the league to not have. And I was in favor of that because the alternative was that these oceanic players just get trapped in OPL forever, never get a shot on the big stage, even if their skill is good enough for it, because they're competing with imports from Europe and China and Korea. And that's not reasonable because they don't have the chance to foster their talent by sitting in Australia on a zillion ping to any good server. So I was in favor of that, like rescuing these players from this region. And indeed, we've had FBI as an outstanding example of a player who is a top tier player in his role in LCS and deserved that opportunity, right? Fudge, jury's still out on that, but we also see players like Destiny coming over. So there's many of these players that I think are making a big difference, and I think this is a good thing overall for the LCS. But don't get a free region and then come back to the table like a pig at the trough and start trying to get everything else on top of that. Can't you guys just like let this one roll for a little bit? You already got a win here, right?
This was another misstep in my opinion, though, because while I'm obviously happy to be able to adopt all these players in, I feel like again we didn't pick a side. Ultimately, we just like tried to do this weird like, how do we do this without like actually full consideration for the big picture? I don't know why this wasn't the moment. If we're gonna like try to make incremental growth instead, like obviously I'm of the opinion, I'll give you my hot take and a bit of what like I think the best solution we could probably come up with would be right now. But why didn't we just hit all minor regions with this right now and say no minor region player is an import anywhere? I don't know why this is like an NA conversation.
I agree. Everyone except
get
the
the
four
adjacency,
major
but-
regions logically should have been counted in. Like, why should a player from Turkey not be counted in this?
Yeah,
Or Brazil?
yeah. And in fact,
what's
just
magical about being from Australia?
yeah,
You know?
and just have those players declare which major region they're eligible for. You, as a Brazilian player, you got one shot. You pick North America, you pick Europe. You know, probably not going to pick China or Korea, but you know, maybe if you're ethnically from those backgrounds and living and speak the language and live in Brazil, maybe you would pick those regions. But at least give them a shot, because now, to be fair, CB LOL in Brazil is doing extremely well in terms of viewership, but I would imagine most of those players have higher ambitions than playing in CB LOL for their entire career.
Oh yeah, the second they hear the average salary in NA, they're like, all right.
Yeah, I think those players should be unlocked to get into the big regions. And I mean, a lot of this conversation is going to be about, has Riot done a very good job of organizing regional scenes and getting grassroots commitment? Yes, they have, like objectively. And if you even recently look at how LFL is doing in France, I can't believe those numbers that they're getting for the French league. That's actually insane to me. But if you look at that, they've done a good job, and I understand that, you know, they want to foster that growth. But the time is now, and I'll get into my thoughts on creating a new Super League with no region locking later in the show. But the time is now to like allow these players to actually have growth and have there be a system of progression that feeds from the bottom, because the viewership is good in many of these leagues, even the kind of minor regions like Turkey or Brazil or France or these other things. The smaller ones have good viewership already. So we know that people are willing to watch these leagues, and I think we should be able to have an appreciable level of growth for the players themselves, because really it's the players who are getting punished in this from the minor regions, and that sucks.
I mean, if there's anyone who can advocate for this, it's going to be me. I brought Newbie over, Leandro. It's actually really unfortunate that I have to be kind of hypercritical of him all the time, because obviously he's absorbing one of our import slots. And with how we're structured and where he's coming from, that doesn't really line up. And if I'm being honest, this was us even last year advocating, saying we're bringing Closer and FBI from minor regions, and everybody unanimously was saying, obviously we're going to be 10th place. These players are not, it's a waste of an import slot. These guys are not going to stack up.
Yes.
And I think the pressure they were under was unfair. They should have had an opportunity to come over here, transition appropriately, and be here as residents. Say they select North America because they hadn't played LEC, LCK, or LPL. But again, we weren't thoughtful enough. We weren't thinking ahead enough. And we've now made another change that ultimately clearly hasn't ended up pleasing everybody fully. And we're back at the table saying, let's talk about fixing it again.
One thing I have an issue with though is basically I understand the whole debate of we can get into owners definitely obviously played a part in inflating the salaries. They've done a lot of stupid things with what they pushed for with the residency thing and the grandfathering in, which again was just poorly executed and quite frankly clearly was not philosophically outlined before you did it. You just decided.
Well, we changed it. To be clear,
yeah, it's been
when we
changed
did
many
it,
times.
we brought some over originally. And then we added a path to naturalization that took time, and it was not long. It was like 2 out of 4. It's like 2 out of 4 years. And then at the end of the 2 years, everyone was like, "Oh, there was some crazy stuff going on with the amount of Koreans that went to LPL, lots of chaos around that." So we shifted the goalposts again. We said, "Okay, you know what? It's I don't know. It was 8 out of 12 splits or something. So 4 out of 6 years or something." And then we got to the 4-year mark, and we did it again, and we're like, "Oh no." They're all leaving again. They're going somewhere. So every time there's a region that's really worried, I would assume historically this is probably LCK. And we shift the goalpost again and say, you know what? No more time-based. It's strictly permanent residency. Now it's green cards. And by the way, when I heard that, I was already a little bit skeptical because at the time, no one had really been able to get green cards in North America. Obviously, we're at the point now where it's a bit more approachable, so that's okay. But I was trying to live in the reality, trying to think about how I do my job when the competition is, for example, China, who presumably is a little bit more in tune with their government, or in my opinion, it's probably easier for them to be in tune.
That's a nice way of putting it.
If the
government decided they really wanted to support LPL, is it not very easy for China to just hand out green cards? Because that's what I'm doing, right? When I appeal to USCIS, when I appeal to the United States government for a green card, it's their authority to decide whether a player is or isn't tenured enough, successful enough. It's some amount of subjective on their end. But obviously, I'm just shouting into the void, hoping that my government is responsive. Whereas I imagine on their end, if they really wanted to, when Chinese billionaires, if they wanted to say, "Hey, I want to bring over this Korean player. Can I get him a green card? He's a resident. I can bring another one. I can bring another one. I can bring another one." I'm always concerned. I always had to plan for the reality where that's just on the table. And that's terrifying.
But it's another reason why, again, when people like Reginald and Jack are calling for these things, understand that China is a country where bureaucracy can be cut through for a fee. Not so much in America.
I assume that's how Worlds happened.
Yeah, right. So yeah, exactly. So and if we end up with another year like we've had in the year gone past, you probably get another big spectacle out there, another big tournament out there.
Oh yeah, they get a
maybe.
second Worlds in a row due to COVID.
By the way, why did no one complain about that? What was so outrageous to me, Danan, was that this is just a complete aside. When they announced oh yeah, China's getting another Worlds, it's nobody said anything. Why didn't anybody say anything?
I mean, to be fair, I'll be completely honest. On our end, we're all still reeling from the fact that we're able to put an event together in the first place. And as you can tell with America right now, we don't have infinite optimism that we would even be able to get it together this year. So right now, I think that's for us trying to put the cart ahead of the horse. We're just trying to get back in our studio, much less try to figure out what is the 6-week road transition. That's Riot and their global team. So if they come to us and say, "Hey, China is the only thing that's functional for the next 24 months," it's really hard for us to go do our own due diligence, talk to a whole bunch of venues, talk to the U.S. government, and be like, "You're wrong. You could have done it at Staples Center. You just didn't try hard enough." We're just not going to be there. But to be clear, remember what I just outlined is a reality we live in now. This has nothing to do with what the rules could change to be. If China just felt like being super amenable to the LPL and they decided that lowering the standard for whatever their green card equivalent is, that just breaks our system. And guess where we're at again? We are once again saying we have to change the rules because of an outside force, right?
Anyway, though, what I was going to say was I'll give a devil's advocate for why one of the reasons I understand why owners, especially the top LCS owners, would want no imports, which is if I'm Jack, for example, I won't use Reginald because he hasn't made a good team in about fucking 4 years, but Jack at least attempts to put together quality rosters, right? If I'm making a team, why do I, as I'm making my team, go, right, fuck, I've got Perks, that's one of the signs of the century, I've got Sven still. Oh, yeah, and then I have to develop some players. why do I have to develop players? Like, does Carlos develop players for G2? Do the Fnatic guys develop players who come? No, they don't. They just fucking sign the best players. So if I'm Jack, I just go, why am I playing a different game to these guys? What, just because they're in Europe and I'm in North America? Now, I will say there are a lot of real world like aspects that don't make it as simple as that. Like, for example, that is someone like Jack trying to have it both ways. He wants to be in North America and have more money than the European orgs, but then benefit from all the European players. It's like, well, that's it. This is example. This is why I say you have to go philosophically and then the specifics, because I can get his perspective. Like, I know everyone's going to now claim in Europe, like, oh, what are you talking about, Thorin? The ERLs, aside from like Rogue and Mad Lions, who the fuck even has their ERL players in their LEC team? Almost no one. Like, you aren't developing those talents. And by the way, nobody. Let's just cut the bullshit, because there's going to be a lot of anti-American sentiment, like unfairly though. Here's one thing I don't want to hear anyone say. Like, but Europe, we have collectively developed. We didn't do any of that. You did that because in isolation, it made sense for that ERL team to run. It made sense for people to demand you had an ERL. No one did that out of their kindness of their hearts. The guys who run the top LFL team didn't go, we're basically just doing it so that G2 can have a really good team. No, nobody did that. Like, that is a fiction, and I do not personally believe, by the way, it is the job of Jack, let's say the GM of the top team in NA, to develop a North American player. Like, nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing it in Korea and China either. Maybe in China, actually, they might be the one place with all the sort of sub-teams that they all secretly fucking own. They might be the only people who actually develop talent. So even though I agree, listen, it's just the way it is with the North American region. You did choose a North American org. I sort of can see their perspective on that, even though I don't necessarily agree.
Well, I think it depends what we mean when we're talking about developing talent and whether or not then you have an obligation to do it. For me, one of the big problems that's been going on in North American League of Legends for as long as I've been following it, and then, you know, took a back seat and just been watching it from afar while I concentrate on other esports, but find myself coming back and it's the same old shit. And that is that, yeah, you're right, Duncan, you know, in terms of from a national perspective, yeah, you're not obliged to develop talent just for the sake of developing American talent so we can say America's a strong region. But what you do have an obligation to do is to develop talent for your own business. And one of the things that has always blown my mind about League of Legends is it was one of the first esports to get really sophisticated with shit like every house had a fucking dietitian, a sports psychologist, all of this stuff. What have you done with all of that? You've just pissed money up against the wall. That's what you've done, because there's no appreciable result. I have seen coaches in the LCS that behave like fucking tyrants with their players. And what for? And I've seen players get burned out by 24 years old because actually they would much rather they were streaming more to meet sponsor obligations than actually training in a way that has any level of sophistication to it. I think the problem in the North American region isn't that there isn't talent there. It's that nobody really knows how to harness it and to develop it in a way where you will see an appreciable progress. And so what they've done is, rather than get involved with that, it's like they've gone to riot and said, how can we break the rules about imports? How can we grandfather people in quicker? They have thought about every fucking problem except the one that is right in front of their face. What does a League of Legends training academy actually achieve? And the reality is, in North America, fuck all.
So there's several layers to this, which I find interesting, and it's important to know that they are playing with a weaker deck, as it were, because the North American server is significantly smaller than other servers. And to give you an idea, like Vietnam's server is bigger than the North American server for League of Legends. And on top of that, it's a small server, and the percentage
that makes perfect sense. Vietnam won a war against North America.
Exactly.
It seems how it should be.
No, they are ahead. They are ahead.
They are ahead.
There you go.
But also, the percentage of people who play ranked in North America is low compared to other servers as well. So, for example, my data is a few years old, and I've used this many times, but the Korean server is bigger than the North American server. 40% of Korean players play ranked. It's 20% of North American players. So you're dealing with a server that is much larger, where also a much bigger percentage of people are competitive on the ladder. And what that means is that the pool of competitive players in America is actually tiny compared to other regions. So the level of competition is very difficult to get high enough. Now, that doesn't excuse things, because I brought this up before too. If you want to run an academy system with your players, almost no teams send them to Korea or China to train in that solo queue environment, right? There are teams that could, yeah, exactly. But I'm just saying, like, there are, and obviously that's not possible right now to a greater or lesser degree. You could send people to Korea, they just have to quarantine for 2 weeks. But the point is that there isn't a system where this training is good. And if I'm one of the North American teams, I would be advocating right now to move all academy teams to Korea so that they would have better training. And you could just cast those games remotely from America. They would just be played in Korea, right? There's no problem with doing that per se. And so I think it's been a failure of sending players to the regions where they can improve a lot of the time, because the North American server is definitely not a place for improvement. I think we could universally agree on that.
But let's also talk about the coaching deficit in League of Legends.
Oh, sure.
Right? Like, you guys know more about Korea than I do, okay? But I know from my tenure in esports how seriously they take it out there and how hard it is to become a coach in South Korea, how closely your credentials will be scrutinized, and also that they do expect some sort of results. Do you remember when North America first started deciding, yeah, we do need some coaches up in this bitch? They would literally go to the players and go, who do you think should be your coach then? And they go, oh, some washed up cunt from 2 years ago. How about that? And they go, yeah, brilliant. That's perfect.
You're giving them too much credit. Honestly, most of them just said like, oh, we have like that analyst guy that like punches the spreadsheets with like our draft info from like every scrim game. Yeah, that guy can go on stage with us.
Yeah, and not even to mention, you know, like, let's just also name drop this person. Anybody who has been taken in by Weldon's fucking snake oil at any point is an instant moron to me. Like,
to be fair, I was the first one.
Your house.
I was the first one.
Everyone gets one, money. Everyone gets one.
No, actually, wait. When you're talking about like the quality of the teams back then, funny enough, Weldon wasn't a mismatch for like where we were at standard wise. I just think we outpaced that very, very quickly and just didn't recognize it at all.
Yeah, I mean, but this is a guy who turns up and says, like, oh, you know, have you thought about not shouting at each other? You thought about having some caffeine before a game? Yep, great, brilliant.
No, like I said, you know, he was the adult in the room. Like, to be clear, we were kids.
Yeah, you know, but the reality is that's what I mean when I'm talking about a deficit. Like, when you talk to actual sports coaches that care about excellence, not some swimming coach who identified a fucking grift with his bullshit degree from a Finnish university. When you start talking to actual qualified people, you realize the problems we've got in North America. There is a developmental deficit that they're not taking seriously, and the people who should be taking it seriously, because it's your business, the owners, they don't, because they do believe they make so much money for Riot that if they have yet another public tantrum, Riot will capitulate. And that's an ongoing issue in the league.
By the way, just for context, in case people didn't follow like League of Legends history, Korma was the coach of SK Telecom and winning worlds in the domestic league 2 years before Weldon Green came on the fucking scene into LCS. That's how far back, like as in 2 years after Korea's already winning with all their staff. People were like, holy shit, this guy can talk to our play. Get him in here. He is the magic man. We will all dance to his tune. Like, even though, as Richard says, like, yeah, the stuff he was saying worked because it was the most basic bitch shit in the world. Like, the real problem with Weldon Green is this. It's not him specifically. It's what he represents, which is it's people not doing their due diligence and going, right, so there's a field called sports psychology, in his case, sports psychology trainer, and let's see who the best is in it and what not. Instead, they just went, wow, such a thing exists? What will they think of next? Hire him, he must be the best. And the joke is, everyone hired him. I used to say this back then, because all those pro players would go, but Thorin, you're not being fair. Look, this team had a lot of success. I was like, he worked for all the teams, you idiot! Logically, he worked for the ones I lost as well.
No, but
how does that make it? That can't be the marker.
If you ever want to analyze Weldon Green's career intelligently, you just watch the Simpsons monorail episode. He's that guy. And that's it. He's the guy going from town to town selling them monorails they don't fucking need. Like, and then I'm off to my next team. See ya.
Yeah, I can actually. Funny enough, I feel like I can actually lend some insight on this when it comes to kind of how that stuff happens. Because obviously he wasn't the only one. This was like a recurring issue that we were facing across teams. I think one of the problems we had early on was we don't have like the hierarchical structures built in with like the understood respect. Obviously, we don't have, especially age and experience on our side. Like League of Legends itself is also like really, really new compared to even like Counter-Strike and StarCraft.
Yeah, of course.
So when we started like trying to build up these systems, they were easily abused on the idea that like just finding someone who had like vague credentials but liked the game, that was like the compromise you could make. Because remember, a lot of these teams were still effectively being operated by the players. Yes. And so you had to get someone who really appealed to the players, someone who the players could talk to, and like they would be like, yeah, even though that person's a boomer, they understand the game, or at least like they watch the game enough, versus like the investor groups or the people who were trying to do high level decision making but didn't have the power yet. they weren't even able to talk about the game. And that was really hard to just like lend those people respect to allow them to make like decisions around correct due diligence. So we ended up hiring a whole bunch of people who like had some amount of like, they just happened to go to college and had like some psychology background. They had something that vaguely asserted an accolade in the space. And then they could also talk about like what fucking NARS Q is called or something. And that was like literally all it took a lot of times for players to be bought in and be like, yeah, I trust this person endlessly. And obviously all those players are gone now, but all those faces remain. That's the problem. Like those people don't get rotated out because they are like that they're the initial wave.
I actually think, by the way, this is a complete aside, but I'll just throw it out there because I think it's something people don't consider. This is one of the points I always make on my shows. I said on Listen Local and Crackdown, I always make it when I'm talking to North Americans, because obviously we're always doing the contrast of like, oh, problem solving in teams, because there's a very weird thing happens in League of Legends where the European players, essentially most of their teams, they sort of like fight amongst each other as players if they have a problem, but in doing so, it's like Lord of the Flies. Like eventually you get a fucking pecking order and you know who's in charge, and whoever says what goes, and eventually there's not an argument, right? It might not be the best system, it's just a system that naturally happens. In North America, the vibe tends to be more like, the reason all the discussion has to go through this coach who acts as a proxy for the conversation is because the implication is the superstar player, his ego's going to get hurt if this rookie tells him what you did wrong. Like, that can't happen. Well, that makes me immediately think, this is pure speculation, obviously I've never lived there in long term, that there's a area North Americans have a real issue in esports, which is the people who are coming into esports don't seem to have any connection to like sports culture traditionally, because if they did, these wouldn't be alien concepts to them. Like, they wouldn't be able to get to age 20 if they'd been like in pee-wee fucking football and playing hockey and being in a basketball team in high school. You couldn't get to age 20 and go, who the fuck's this guy? Is he better than me at the game? He can't tell me. Like, that's some mad take. Like, that's the take of the guy who he saw high school out of a fucking vent of a locker. Like, that ain't a guy who's a fucking sportsman, mate. So as a result, I think that's a real cultural issue you have, because as you say, Danan, like, the real hack is this: Koreans aren't genetically better at video games. They just have, it just so happens they sort of backdoored into a sweet spot in culture where they've retained enough of the sort of conservative values that make people have to do certain things, that like essentially they just have like an old school connection to their heritage that just doesn't exist in the modern day.
Yep. Well, and I'm kind of curious, like pivoting the conversation a little bit towards what we're doing now. If you guys haven't been tuned in super closely, I think every single LCS team, all 10, changed their head coach in the last 2 years, like all 10. Do you feel like what we're seeing this year, or even last year a little bit, is like that much progress overall? Like, are we closing the gap, do you feel?
Not really. It's not the same.
Like look at it this way. For example, Bjergsen retires obviously from TSM after winning a championship, and ultimately the solution ends up being like, I guess he's just going to be the head coach of TSM now, right? Is that like, I don't know, like I follow traditional sports, that's not like historically how things work.
Yeah, that situation.
Like LeBron just retires tomorrow and he's now coaching the Lakers.
Listen, I'll give Reggie credit. If anyone was ever going to be the fucking Jerry Jones of the LCS, it would obviously be Reginald. So I'll give him credit on that one. There's other indie boomers out there making some mad moves as well that don't make sense. You know, that's basically Bjergsen's his Jason Garrett. So we'll see how this plays out.
I mean, you get into a ridiculous situation though as well. I mean, that's like probably a topic that'll come up at another time. But I mean, imagine a coach coming in, working with players. First of all, you've already got this legendary tenure within the organization. Second of all, you're already a co-owner of the organization.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like, yeah. So it's like, you know, there has to be, in all great sports setups, it can't just be the coach's idea that comes down and you follow it blindingly, you know, allegiance because this person wields a title. Equally, a coach has to have some authority or players will run amok and they will, you know, it's a balancing act. You look there, that's completely out of whack. Who's going to pipe up and say, actually, I don't think this is a good idea, or maybe push back a little bit in a training session and say, when we did this, it worked. Who's going to say that to Bjergsen? He's a co-owner. He just says, right, okay, duly noted. Next time he's having cocktails with Reggie in the hot tub, he fucking tells him, like, yeah, fire that cunt. See ya.
Of course.
No, I'm fucking Bjergsen. No one fucking undermines me. So that's a nightmare situation from the get-go. And also,
I've heard when Bjergsen held his first like little team meeting, like the nightmare was it took 45 minutes till the applause could stop Richard because no one wanted to be the first one to stop that.
No, exactly. So that's a situation. I mean, for me though, if Americans wanted to pay attention to, like, you know, kind of someone who was developed into a coach that from being a player and not a particularly amazing player, and has gone on to achieve excellent in coaching. You look at Yamoto Cannon, you know, he's a guy that, like, you look at his career path trajectory and the fact that he's gone as a Western coach to a Korean organization. These things can be achieved. As I said, I think the deficit in North America, it's not so much about players as it is about coaches and trainers. And it's good they're trying to identify that and the moving pieces around. But if you're still locked in this idea where someone like Bjergsen could just walk into coaching one of the top teams in the region, you haven't really thought about the problem intelligently at all. It's going to persist.
Oh, sorry.
Well,
I've got a
and
question,
keep in mind,
actually.
also,
Yeah, go on,
like
go on.
quadrupling their investment. Like, let's not forget that this wasn't just like they gave Bjergsen what they'd been doing. They like gave Bjergsen their league division effectively, and then also that I'm aware of, or at least my expectation, assuming we get to find out someday, is that they're probably spending like 4 or 5 times more than they've ever spent before, which seems like a weird angle on it. It's like it's your first year. Let's go spend all of it.
What I want to ask was this, right? Obviously, another way that you can approach these things is you can also do it financially, not just like arbitrary rules. So what I want to know is this. What about if we went the other way and it was like you're allowed imports or more imports? Maybe it's not, maybe you don't just make it like all imports. Maybe you have 3 imports now or whatever. But instead you make some sort of a factor, like a business related factor, where it's like if you are a North American org, for example, who runs an all 5 NA player lineup, or you have less imports, maybe you get like could be the equivalent of like a fucking franchise fee credit where you don't pay as much, or you pay slower, or you actually maybe even get extra percentage of the earnings or something. What would you think of something like that? I'm asking from like the org side. Would that even be something that people would be open to? I'm trying to make it like a compromise where it's like, you're like incentivized not to. But, so basically, the idea for me would be if you're a small org, maybe that's how you just make money. Like you don't have to spend as much and you get a little kickback for not going all Korean or whatever.
Well, let me stress one thing really quickly. I don't think there are small or big orgs in the league right now. I think on the outside it looks like that based on the decisions some people make. But functionally, I feel genuinely like the skew is pretty even across the board. So most people, like the decisions that everyone made, like Liquid made, effectively every team could be making those decisions if they wanted to. A lot of them, I would say, are just like electing not to. But specifically around trying to build like systems, trying to like do some fancy architecture in the rules to make this feel a little bit better. It's theoretically plausible. I'm sure there's some of this stuff on the table at the owners' meetings, but I will say one of the challenges there, of course, is that there are legal ramifications for the decisions you make around this kind of stuff.
True.
There are just some structures that are just blocked away, like you can't do without a CBA, without a collective bargaining agreement, and obviously you can't do that without an actual proper players union. And in my opinion, we're still like a far cry away from that being the reality. So anything that we do probably isn't going to be enough because of how tight our hands are on a lot of this stuff. So this is where, again, I feel really bad in that why are we trying to find a middle ground? Why are we not picking a side? I'll give you my hot take now. If we're not going to open up importing, if we look at it and say, like, the other regions aren't on board, or like we can't get the exception for NA if that's a thing that's being asked for or something. If we can't do that, I honestly think we should go the other direction. We're never going to, but it'd be fantastic if we just unrolled it and said, look, we really care about our identity. It's really important. We're going to be super protective of it. We're going to go back and say, it's 2 imports, that's what you get, and we're going to take away the grandfathered. We're going to kill that. We're going to go back and take away the status. We screwed up. We shouldn't have been moving the goalposts. We shouldn't have allowed it in the first place. This like path to naturalization was already like a challenge for us to maintain and manage, and at this point it's already kind of broken the system. I think the struggle is that's not going to happen.
It's the fairest approach, right?
Yeah.
Well, and especially because you
do that over time, amortize it over time, and say, like, in 3 years, Santorin's no longer a resident, right? In 3 years, Bjergsen's no longer a resident. And maybe that gets us to where we think we should have been, right? Where we're trying to be like super pure on understanding what we're trying to do as a league. But right now we're just not on the same page. And that's a huge struggle for us. It's like we have to decide. But I have a caveat for this. If we do this, we have to set our expectations differently. We can't sit here and say that we need to be winning worlds consistently. Like, yeah, maybe we can hit a home run in like the next 5 years. Maybe one team will make a C9-esque run like what our C9 looked like last spring. But I don't think we're going to hit like LPL or LCK level of presence. We're not going to have 2 teams in finals. We're maybe not even going to get 2 teams out of groups, but maybe one team wins Worlds. And if that's okay, if that's the expectation we set, then we should do that. But if we're going to sit here and like constantly be like, the only thing that matters is NA has to win, and like, do you think they're going to be happy with one? No. Like, we're going to definitely say we're like an insanely valuable region. We have the most valuable eyeballs. We have the most resources functionally right now for how we're operating, or at least we're spending the most. If that's the case, like, we need to win multiple. If they're going to keep the expectation at we need to win like 2 out of the next 5 or 3 out of the next 5 world championships, obviously the literal only pathway, in my opinion, to do that in this short term is to undo the restrictions completely.
Well, I also completely agree with you about undoing the grandfather clauses and the residency clauses, because as we've stated, each region has a fucking different government. So it's not even fair as it is, right? You know, those regions that have been more successful about being able to petition the government to give green cards or permanent residency status are going to have an advantage when it comes to importing players. So I think the combination, what you're talking about, of rolling back those rules, and then on top of that, you allow the minor regions to declare a residency status. If you do those two things together, that would be ideal for me.
Yeah, but to be clear, again, that is us conceding that our region's goal is not to win Worlds the next like 3 out of 5. That's just us stabilizing.
I mean,
that's
if your goal was to win Worlds, you never should have bought an NA franchise. So I don't have a problem with that. Like,
well, to be clear, I mean, is that not what is going on right now? I think a lot, like, isn't that the owner saying, "I wish I didn't buy a franchise"? Because I want to be winning Worlds, and I'm now realizing, I'm now finding out, I'm now padding out the scenarios and saying, shit, it's not gonna happen.
It's more like everyone's playing Monopoly, and Reggie and Jack know the banker, and they're like, "Can't you just, slip me a couple hundred?
Yeah, exactly.
Change the rules. I don't have to go to jail every time I pass through. Old mates."
It comes down to the same problem with the mindset between, again, the different regions and what we think of when we think about sports owners and sports GMs and managers. And basically in America, everyone wants to do it on what a European would consider easy mode. In our leagues, the big leagues where you would own a club, we have relegations. You can invest your money, shoot for the stars, fuck it up through either incompetence, bad luck, and you can lose everything. I'll give you an example from English football. Leeds, classic example. Portsmouth, another one. Leeds is probably the best. They went from being in the Champions League, the big European competition, probably the equivalent of Worlds, if you think about it, like League of Legends. They made it to like the last 4, got knocked out by like Real Madrid or whoever. And then, slowly but surely, they sold great players off. They had money to spend. And when they went to buy other players, or they trusted in youth development, it wasn't there. And the next thing you know, within a few years, they're relegated, and then they're relegated again. And now suddenly, it's took them all this time to get back into the Premier League. That's how we do things in Europe. There should be consequences for ineptitude. That's what we believe. That's what our culture is. You come over to American sports, they just go, well, listen, can we just all agree? Let's not get relegated. In fact, the only place I've ever seen America sort of socialize things is in fucking sports. You won't even do it for healthcare. But Warper Tide, a billionaire NFL owner, has
you see, Richard,
pay the price.
We have to protect the billionaire sports teams from failure. That is how it works here. It's socialism for billionaires, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. So, and you're like, oh, yeah, well, look, that guy's finishing last and they had a tough season, so we should give them the best players so we should do this. But that person's earned less money. Should we let them pay less for their healthcare? Now, fuck off. He can die in the fucking streets. But, as long as the sports work. So one of the things I've noticed in esports, just as a trend, when all these North Americans got all that VC money and started being able to live out their sports ball fantasies, they've all acted like the same dickheads without ever thinking for a minute. Esports doesn't have to do your thing. It doesn't all have to be franchise leagues. But again, constant tantrums. They've got the money. They've got the influence. They've got the power. Like, and this is what you end up with. So I honestly, like I say, I think the problem you've got with North American esports, and in particular North American League of Legends, is there's a cultural like rot that starts at the top. There is an expectation of excellence without any of the apparatus to achieve it. There is a belief that any problem we get, we'll either spend our way out of it, and if that doesn't work, we'll just go to the games developer and our business partners and say, change the rules so we don't have to, we've tried spending, we're all out of ideas. It's like, no, do you want to build real academies? Do you want to improve coaching? Do you want to do recruitment drives at collegiate esports? Like, think of something, but they don't. Right, we tried spending it, and we're all out of ideas. And until you move away from that, it's going to be like this forever in that region.
What's also funny, Richard, is that there's this arrogance and expectation that the best players should come to LCS, right? But objectively, the viewership of LCS is the lowest of any of the 4 major regions by a significant margin. LEC is now attracting about double the average concurrent viewers across all languages. And yes, guys, before you tweet at me, this includes LCS co-streamers. ES charts, you look at the data, and LCS is half of LEC viewership. LCK and LPL, much bigger viewership. So why explain to me why we should be trying to entice the best players to play in a low viewership region compared to the other 3 major regions, right? There's CB LOL is now competing with LCS in terms of viewership, right?
Yeah.
Should tell you something. Yeah. So, like, I agree that it's just this arrogance of expectation that is not founded in any kind of historic excellence, reality of the size of the audience, any of these things. And I say this as somebody who actually, sometimes enjoys watching LCS, right? So people have their own preferences, but that's not fair to the real picture here. Like, objectively, LPL is absolutely enormous when it comes to viewership. Probably some of that is lies by the Chinese government or the Chinese streaming services. But yeah,
the whole expectation, I also think, is massively accelerated just by what Fnatic and G2's teams did the last 3 years, basically. Like, that's the real problem as well, is if I go back to that scenario I gave before, if I'm Jack comparing myself to Carlos, it's like, mate, his team can win Worlds. That's not even a joke. Like, that's not even like maybe if the best. It actually could have, it probably should have happened that year, like they were that good. The problem is, even the best team anyone's ever had from Team Liquid, TSM, Cloud9, like their scenario was probably semis was the best, So the problem is, whether or not it makes any financial sense, the fan who was a fan of European honor, they're not going to consider these things. It's one thing I spent half my time on our shows doing. I try to explain that, like, it's not reasonable to like laugh at fucking SK Gaming for finishing 9th if the team that finishes first spent 5 times more than them. Like, you have to make the expectations according and appropriate to what the what the resources are. Like, maybe the guy who's the GM of SK did a better job than all of us.
But hang
maybe
on,
he killed it.
Remember what goes around comes around as well. Like, if I was Carlos, I'd be loving this right now. Like, he must be tumescent, because people seem to forget. Remember when it was Sven and Mithy, right, at G2? And, you have to sell those players because the big North American orgs have come in with their spending power and they're waving their dick around. And now you've got to fall in line. You're the little region. We're the big boys. Who the fuck's laughing now? Carlos is taking teams to Worlds and actually challenging real teams while you're going 0-6 and fucking crying about it. Money does not solve all your problems. Get with the fucking program.
I do wish we had...
Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just saying, I do wish we had an LEC GM in here. I'm kind of curious to hear about like where they feel like they're at relative to obviously the LCS with respect to like all these kinds of things. Because we keep pointing out G2 and Fnatic, but we can barely name the rest of the league because they've been doing like sacrificial rituals to the world's gods, just trying to do everything they can to prop up their 2 teams to like continue to maintain their relevance. But like, imagine how like devastating that region ends up looking if either of those 2 teams have like a real blundered attempt this year, right? Like just say they struggle.
The outliers for sure. Those 2 teams,
Like, we're going to be talking about how LEC just doesn't exist conceptually because of the moves that happened and how everything's gone down recently.
By the way, if we're going to bring up though owners having tantrums,
I was about to say
it's time.
It's time. I was about to move us that way anyway. It's time to have a laugh. This is what you want. Right. Let's be real.
This is
what you guys are here to watch for.
The saddest thing of all, by the way, obviously, like we should actually read out the scenarios, but I will just say it up front. Believe it or not, Reginald, mate. I know what to expect from him. It's actually Jack that I was most disappointed in of the two responses. Just because Jack's was so whack. Like, his angle was like he's talking to someone and he goes, well, we believe we should be allowed to recruit anyone. And they go, yeah, sure, but, we need North Americans. Like, other people. What do you mean, other people? Like, it was one of those, like, it's getting mad over nothing. Like, dude, no one's even said any harsh shit. Like, what the major problem he had there was he took a bad angle and he just wouldn't let it go. He just kept
We'll talk about that. We will talk about that. Let's. that was a, let's say, an overstated response.
Cringing internally again.
Yeah, it was painful.
All right. So let's bring up the first tweet here, which is going to be Vulcan just innocently tweeting about the state of imports, because it was a big discussion that many people were talking about. Vulcan, who is definitely a top 2 support player.
Come on, keep going.
Within this region, says, by the way, could definitely play professionally in Europe, 100%, no doubt.
Yeah.
If you want a full import team, go buy a team in that region, XD. Reasonable take.
Even as a fucking XD, he's obviously joking, isn't he? It's not like a fucking manifesto.
Yeah, but also a good point. If you do want a team full of Koreans, go buy. Why didn't you buy an LCK team? Totally reasonable. Andy Din, TSM Reginald, ignorant tweet. If every LCS team left the LCS, you'll be out of a job, buddy, and probably be paid minimum.
Here's what's amazing about it. Reginald doesn't even understand the concept of optics enough to not tweet like a fucking 18th century robber baron who is like approaching a peasant who he will now force to work for him in exchange for throwing a little fucking like pouch of money that he hasn't even counted on the fly. Reginald, you are ridiculous, my man. Just get a PR agent, for fuck's sake.
There's so many bad elements to that tweet. I mean, the fact that he's opening up with the word ignorant is like, just again, a stupefying lack of self-awareness.
Word of the week,
Yeah, what true. Yeah, he does have that calendar, doesn't he? But so he says if every LCS team left the LCS, you'd be out of a job. So what that actually says is that Reginald believes the LCS has no value without the current crop of teams. He doesn't have any faith in the league, doesn't have any faith in the system, doesn't have any faith in what Riot has built. He believes that, for instance, if TSM leaves, that league has no value. Of course, what he doesn't realize is, actually, Riot Games, they hate dealing with owners like Reggie that they have to keep around for legacy purposes, and they would much rather be dealing with new money, professional sports organizations.
Yes.
Yeah, like all the people who
100%.
bought into the Overwatch League. So here's what happens if TSM leave. Yes, it takes a bit of a hit. Yes, viewership might be down, but they just reach out to all their investment friends and say, there's a slot that's opened, and it gets filled like
and
that.
20 million is
Esports
nothing
is
to
hot
these
topic.
sports teams either.
Isn't.
Nothing.
Of course it isn't. So the idea that like TSM is some irreplaceable force within the league, and that everyone would be destitute if they didn't stay in the
shocking,
fucking LCS. It is staggering. And then to say to a player, by the way, an example of a player that proves that there is talent in North America, right? Which, so they can be found. No wonder Reggie's targeting him, because it makes all the dickheads that have been letting talent slip through their fingers for years look really bad. His existence, it proves unicorns are real, right? And so then he goes, and you'd probably be paid minimum. No, you fucking moron. This is a guy who's so good at the game and is actually probably slumming it in your region. He just goes, well, fuck LCS. I'm off to Europe. I'm off to any region, maybe even China or Korea, and just gets a fat contract out there. He'd be fine. You wouldn't be. You would be replaced overnight, Reginald Jamadka.
Also, just to say, in my many years of experience across a variety of esports titles with top-tier professional players, these people are incredibly driven, and most of the time, not all of the time, sometimes they are just like mechanical idiots, but most of the time they're very smart people, and they definitely wouldn't be getting paid minimum wage. You think that Vulcan couldn't go to school and get a good job with his work ethic and intelligence? Of course he could. This guy's not going to be flipping burgers at McDonald's. You don't get this far in a career by being lazy.
I just love here's the thing though, it's not even like the actual essence of the message, you know, we can debate whether that's it's just the take is what I love. Like I just love the way his whole take's
I didn't even think about it like that though, minimum wage as in real life. I was thinking esports minimum.
Oh right.
Who knows?
No, but
who knows? Maybe that's what he's talking about.
Think about how mad this tweet is. Instead of just being like, listen, you're a player, you don't maybe understand the scene like I do, you know, it's a lot more. He just goes, you ignorant parasite on my ass. Mate, Reggie, you better have this fucking nailed down, mate, or this could go badly. I don't know if you're aware, Reginald. I know you aren't, mate, but players are more popular than you are. Like, I know you're not, but I mean, you'll know at the end of this year because you'll find out that TSM, the team, doesn't do it without Bjergsen, mate. So I don't know why. Again, remember, in a world of optics, you have to be so careful how you respond to players because people will be against you just because it's a player. You know, like you could even be right if you just misphrase it. You seem too aggressive, you know.
I mean, I disagree. I actually don't think you have to be careful at all. Or at least, like, so far with how
We don't have to be, but yeah.
with how we've handled a lot of different people in the league sphere, we haven't cared at all what they've said.
Sure.
Like, I don't know if this is going to have any long-lasting implications, and this is not the first time, and this isn't even, like...
I know where you're going with this. It's not even Reginald's top 10 stupidest fucking
Yeah.
take, is it? It's not even close. This is why Monty was like, I don't even know if we'll do a show off this. And then, like, not even Reginald is the outrageous one here. Although it is crazy how he just has a full mental breakdown after this.
Let me run interference on this one a little bit and try to come from the team side. I obviously don't agree with this take, but I can definitely lend some understanding of like what would pressure someone to conceivably type this on their keyboard. The implication here obviously is that if possible, all 10 LCS teams are aligned in the idea, and again, we don't have absolute verification, but you can assert it from this, that they would go to another region, right? Like if they could just like handpick where their slot was located, it would just be somewhere else. I think to me, what stands out about this that's concerning is it indicates that like there's some amount of alignment, right? Like this is we've already seen like all 10 LCS teams like give their like vague answers, their assertions on where they stand, and nobody came out and said like I'm against it, keep import restrictions, we need to make sure this doesn't happen. And then when you take those 10 tweets from Travis and then you follow it up with this, to me it indicates, yeah, like legitimately there's probably some high level concerning conversations going on saying, hey, like there's a problem and we need to be solving for it. Now, is it really just like something as simple as the import restriction stuff here? I would guess not. Like I can't imagine that's the only thing that would make Reggie like go on Twitter and say something like this. But it was definitely an indicator if genuinely there's concern that like NA players or like the NA talent pool is so effectively useless in achieving our goals that we would just like pick up our like $200 million thing and just move it somewhere else if we could, right? That to me is like the big implication that
I
I'm
agree.
worried about.
That is actually the most concerning part of this is that, you know, these people, some of these people seem ready to just like, you know, pick up their shit and leave if they're not given access to a broader pool of players. That's very deeply concerning and also kind of ridiculous.
Well, I mean, look, there's the broader thing as well, like, because I mean, there is a serious component to it in the sense that I think when you have powerful owners that we know have Riot's ear for good or for ill, basically saying to players publicly, you know, if anything happens to this league, if it starts to lose its value, we're essentially gonna fuck you over financially. I mean, there is a little component to that. Right, because he is saying you'll be paid the minimum.
Doesn't sit well with me that one when you say that.
You know, and like obviously we know Andy. The only reason he was on fucking Twitter in the first place is because he saw Lord Jack, cartel member, getting fucking wrecked because of a stupid thing he said on social media. So
Reggie reminds me of that joke that Bill Maher used to have about fucking George W. Bush, where he said, look, can you just let Tony Blair do the talking at those like summit meetings and stuff? Yeah. Like, you don't need to get up there as well, but he can talk. Like, just let, I mean, the joke here is maybe actually don't let Jack talk for you. But under other circumstances, he usually does a pretty good job.
Yeah, Jack normally does a good job. All right, let's move over to the Jack Reddit post, because this, to me, this was very out of character for Jack, who is normally really, I think,
dude, I just kept scrolling like, please, why are there more of these? Why? Someone get the keyboard away from me, please! And I say that as Thorin.
All right, hold on.
Again, self-awareness.
Let me pull this up now. Okay.
I also added some additional context on Discord for you guys if you want to check that out.
All right. I can't do that because you guys are full screen for your webcams, but someone else can chime in with it. So this is Jack's response to a fan, because obviously one of the arguments that was made was that people said, well, I wouldn't be interested in the LCS anymore because I like to see homegrown players, or I like to see players that have committed to being players in the LCS region, which makes sense because storylines are a huge part of why people watch esports. And, having the entire league change over potentially with the, dropping of the import rule, I think would be detrimental to viewership. Unless somebody managed to win like MSI or Worlds, right? Then people will come back because the winning is important. But I think if that doesn't happen, then you basically just kill the league, which would be obviously problematic for LCS team owners. So Jack says, I don't agree with your opinion, and that's fine. Your comment, not a bunch of Koreans, is distasteful and would be considered racist by many. I don't support xenophobic or racist comments and would like to see us elevate beyond that type of sentiment, which is, if this had been that kind of comment that he was responding to, might be reasonable, but this is just like taking it from like 1 to 10.
I knew I shouldn't have let Jack play that fucking Among Us stream with AOC. I thought it was just harmless games, and it's gone too far on it. So.
Bro, so let me. I've got to tee off here because I've got a ton of material. This is the reason I agree to be a horseman, essentially, shit like this, right?
Oh god,
it is ridiculous. So there is so much going on here.
I know, right?
Right, there is so much going on here. I want to believe he's playing some 5-dimensional chess, right? Because we all know that actually a good way to sort of compel someone around your way of thinking is essentially to fucking gaslight them into thinking that they're a bigot. But let's just rewind and let's take it at face value. So first of all, the idea that that in a sport where regionality is pushed as a feature of that sport, we don't play the regions, we keep them all separated until Worlds, and then we all play. And the whole narrative on a broadcast is, can the North Americans do it? Will the Chinese overcome the Koreans? Wow, Chinese in the center. All region, well, the plucky Brazilians who've come through the wild card. The regionality is a feature of the sport and played upon to generate fan interactions. In fact, when they've done like all-star tournaments around the world, remember, they've played up on the idea that it's the first time it's come to this country and stuff like this, and you're going to get to see these players play. So regionality is baked into League of Legends, and it's a very good thing because it is added to the interest, added to the spice of a lot of matches. And so then to turn around to a legitimate Cloud9 fan and say just because they would prefer it if there were North Americans on the roster. They're not saying they don't want any Koreans on the roster. They're saying they don't want an entire team to be Korean. And then you turn around and go, you fucking racist bastard. Is one of the most mad things I think I've ever seen. And it shows,
hey, everyone, this guy's racist. Get him. Tear the Cloud9 jersey from his back. Get him.
It shows how far removed I think owners have become. Jack is in a fucking mansion looking at a spreadsheet. He has become so divorced from actual on-the-ground fans, on-the-ground sports, that he's forgotten why regionality matters to these people.
So
obviously, with the Spitfire purchase, plays into the whole aviator theme there, Richie. You like that? You like that?
Don't get me wrong. I've got another 2 points to make on this comment. But no. I don't want to talk for a long period of time.
So what I will say about that is like obviously this is an overreaction, but I think also people generally are pretty keyed into these tactics. I think like several years ago, this tactic might have been successful, but I think for the most part, most people are pretty like, the whole like you're a bigot because you said something that is not really bigoted is overplayed at this point, and most people can recognize that tactic. But what's wild to me about this take in the first place is I think nobody's had this perspective yet. How many of these fans that he's talking to do you think are like anime or K-pop or like Asian adjacent interest fans? Like 50%, 60%, 80%?
Massive amount.
Yeah. So like this audience that we know in esports has a passion for.
They have skin in the game that they're not racist.
Yeah, they have a passion for Asian. Asian cultural products. Look at Team Liquid selling out this Naruto line in like 5 minutes, right? So if anything, these people already are pretty open to accepting Asian imported culture and enjoying that level of entertainment. So I think it's even more absurd to call out this audience where the majority of people already have these interests. And so in a way, it's speaking to something where I think it's interesting because they're willing to take these other interests and they say, maybe this is not what I want out of this product, especially because they can always go watch Korean teams and Chinese teams and other leagues. It's not like it's an either or. You can do both things at the same time. You can enjoy them for different reasons. So I think it's just wild to even make this accusation against this audience.
Also, look at the context of the team. I'm not talking like the league. Cloud9 specifically are a team that came up with 5 North American players, became very good in the world, had one of the longest lasting lineups ever. Then, in the modern day, have some of the best North American players, have brought through some of the best North American players. I mean, the guy, Jack, was practically signing Sneaky for extra years just because people were like, the fans really do like him, though. It's like, he wasn't fucking a world-class player. They just thought, fuck, got to give them what they want. So then after all that, we go, you guys, like North Americans, what are you? Racist, like, mate.
Especially
can't just pretend history never happened.
Well,
what?
I'll tell you, Duncan, right? I'll tell you about something that would make Jack's blood pressure shoot through the roof, because there's one of the most racist sports rules ever in English football, right? And that is, we have something literally called the homegrown player rule. And what this says is that on a registered squad of 25, you can only have 17 players that aren't considered non-homegrown. A homegrown player is someone that's lived in the country and been developed by a club for 3 years, and they're even talking about making it a bit more, they have to be an English national. There's a lot of debate about that,
Right.
because I'll explain why. So it comes down to, again, sports structure. England has a football team. If it doesn't develop talent, it will never win a tournament. The FA, the English Football Association, don't like that very much. That should be the jewel in the crown. But how can we guarantee all of the clubs playing at the top tier of English football actually develop talent? We just simply mandate that they have to. And otherwise, what you would end up with is, again, the haves and the have-nots. Everything we just talked about at the start of the show. They would literally just go out and be like, right, well, I'll get that player from that youth academy in France, that player from that youth academy in that African team, you know, and they would jump all around the world and just bring them in. And what would happen is the development of English talent would stall and suffer because there's no obligation as a club to do it. Everyone loves the club. Any player that pulls on the jersey is all right by me, say the fans, and they don't think too much about it. But there is this regional context that someone has to be the adults in the room and say, probably this is a good thing if English teams actually do develop a smidgen of English talent. And you'll notice from the numbers, not even the majority. That was a rule that was brought in because we'd had a golden generation of players massively underachieved, and as one by one they retired, the Football Association were going, fucking hell, no one's even close to these players. We've got to do something about it. So it turns out that the entire structure of English football right now is one big racist circle jerk, is it, Jack? That's what we're all doing. Like, we're going to be fucking goose stepping around. I mean, like, grow the fuck up, mate. Like, you have to understand that, like, if America actually had been in League of Legends, this is now, have been a bit more stalwart on these rules and just having 2 imports and none of your grandfathered bullshit, you might have actually developed a North American player over the past 3 years, and your fans might be cheering on a predominantly North American team, and then there'd be no need for silly conversations like this. So if it's good enough for real sports, it's definitely good enough for Cloud9.
Well, I also think you do have to give Cloud9 credit and Jack credit. They actually have developed a lot of the talent for North America. In fact, they've been one of, if not the most successful teams at developing North American talent. And I think Jack here, like, obviously he went overboard. I think most of the time he's really good at handling these situations. But I mean, this is such a caricature. Like, surely there is somebody out there who is what he is claiming. You know, there is somebody who's like racist and is like, I don't want that in LCS. But how many people those are there realistically? Like, it's an international competition where people watch multiple regions. They're, you know, most of the fans are exposed constantly to international media outside of esports, like we talked about.
Our region is the most diverse.
Yeah, our region is incredibly diverse, right? So, I mean, the argument is kind of just ridiculous on its face, and also is not even reflective of his own efforts to develop that North American talent, which, you know, so many of the players that are on other teams in the LCS were developed by the Cloud9 Academy system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's where the deflecting goes from here, right?
Quite a bit lately, sorry. What did you say? I didn't hear you talk.
I said, isn't that where the deflecting kind of goes from here? I think it starts to be this weird. This is like a weird pivot almost all the owners did in their answers, where they were just like, let's not talk about imports. Let's talk about how we're supporting amateur and academy development. Let's focus on the good things we're doing for the region. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm down to talk about those in like a different forum, but obviously in the context of the import restrictions, ultimately, I don't feel like those are really the same topic.
All right, Richard, let's get on with your other points. I want to hear
Richard,
what your
go ahead.
other, your other takes.
No, but just on that point to Danan, what Danan says there, I mean, go look at TSM's roster. I think across the starting lineup and their academy side, I think they have a total, including substitutes, of 3 native North Americans.
Well, actually, do you know who he's just classed as a resident?
I'll go for it. Wait, actually, I'll even give you lower hanging fruit than that, and I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. I actually think for TSM's starting LCS roster, 0 of their players were born in the US or Canada. I actually think Spica was born in China, and then he got American citizenship. Yeah. But if we're trying to be like super like base level conversation of like, we don't at this point, Australians are actually like, they're more grandfathered imports than they are residents for what we're talking about. None of them were technically born here if we really wanted to argue that.
And I also realize the peril you enter when you start talking about Native Americans and Americans that are native to America and all that. So we'll just fucking move on. Don't get me wrong, guys. I'm European, so I know about things like history, unlike Americans. Anyway.
What I want to know is why are you wasting time shuffling like fucking deck chairs on the Titanic when this will all just be a giant LPL in 5 years?
So anyway, the final point is just this. And it's something about a broader cultural thing where I'm starting to have a little bit of a worry because, you know, look, I think one of the worst things you can do to fans that are genuinely invested in the development of your team, genuinely care about the players that get to represent the jersey, is essentially turn around and insult them, and not just insult them, imply that they are in some way malevolent. And it's not the first time I've seen Cloud9 engage in this type of behavior lately, and it's starting to make me a bit concerned about some of the direction they're going in. Because remember, they still employ that manager that turned around and said Santorin's a racist because he wore a Volibear police skin in a match. And so suddenly you start to think like, you know, where are we going to start drawing the lines about like who you can lash out and when? Because you've got a fucking bee in your bonnet during COVID lockdown, and you're probably a bit too overinvested in your American politics. If Cloud9 is truly a global organization, they need to start thinking globally. And not everyone is going to be aware of things that are happening on the ground culturally in America, sometimes even if they live there. And also, I think you have to understand that your fans are coming from all over the world. You might a much better argument would be if Jack had just turned around and said, because we're a global brand, we think globally. We're trying to move away from regionality. We think that's one of the strengths of esports, but thanks for your input. He's essentially said the same thing. He chose not to. That isn't a mistake Jack's made. He's deliberately chosen to attack that fan as racist, thinking that there is some sort of cultural capital to be gained from it. And that causes me a lot of concern about, you know, what Cloud9 might be doing in the future. People might not think that's so serious. I definitely have some. I take umbrage with that, frankly.
I don't want to take any wind out of your sails, but I do want to let you know I did hear that C9 let some people go recently, and I actually think she was part of that group.
She was.
So she's actually no longer associated with C9 that I'm aware of.
But I mean, well, okay, but now it looks.
But your point still stands. Your point still stands.
No, now it looks like it was nothing to do with what is one of the most disgraceful outbursts I think I've ever seen. It now looks like, well, we were just cutting corners or recycling staff. It's been done quietly to the side, and ultimately, now because Jack has said something equally ridiculous, there's a tacit endorsement of her behavior, essentially. So, yeah, I think, look. We've just come out of a very tumultuous time in America. I mean, come out is a myth. It's America. It's been tumultuous since it fucking started, since you threw us Brits out. America thrives on being tumultuous and thrives on the chaos.
The first import rule, some would say.
Yeah, indeed. The problem is that the media's gone into overdrive with its like insane screeching. And the one thing we shouldn't want to happen is for that type of discourse to become the norm in esports, because we can reject all of the stuff from outside side of esports
Yes.
that we don't want here. We don't have to accept it. And when you see figureheads like Jack, who, by the way, 99% of the time have a fantastic relationship with him, I think he's a great ambassador for the game, but not when he's behaving like that, and not when he is essentially demonizing fans and talking down to fans who would bleed for the Cloud9 cause. They've got some of the most loyal fans in the world. I think that's absolutely outrageous and distasteful.
I also think that just in general, esports as a whole is an extremely globalized and welcoming space for the most part compared to many other industries that exist. And that's one of the things that I've always loved about it was its internationalism and its kind of global spanning community. And I think that's what many people really enjoy about esports. And so to bring these aspects into it, I'm not saying it doesn't have any problems, but I do think to overload on these aspects is a mistake and will be received very poorly by most esports fans that consider themselves connoisseurs of global culture, as it were, and very.
He made a massive rod for his back with that one. And he should have immediately recanted. To double down is ridiculous. And I think long term, look, I mean, remember in esports we have a unique problem, and it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a blessing and a curse. People don't stay loyal to a team because they were born down the road from it and their dad went there and bought a season ticket like you see in traditional sports. You pick your team. It's like picking your friends, right? They always say you're born to your family, but you pick your friends. Therefore, there's like a extra bit of value. Well, esports fans pick the team they want, and it can be based on players. It can be based on brand values. Sure, it can be based on region too, but they can choose to leave at any point. There's not something anchoring them there. And as a result, you will see a lot of movement from fans in general in this business. And when you start putting up cultural barriers like that to people who might just want to support your team, but not get drawn into the screeching hysteria of modern America, you have to think long term about what that could mean for a global organization, frankly.
One area, though, where I actually also can, like, devil's advocate somewhat, because I also just agree with it as a position from the owners, is the fans are absolutely feckless on this topic from North America.
Yeah.
Every single year, they complain that they want all this North American talent and it for it to be developed and all the rest of it. And then they're not fans of the teams that have the North American talent, because what they're actually saying, by the way, had square brackets context in, which was, of course I want all the players to be of North America and then be as good as China and Korea. It's like, well, so you watch what? And that's now, it's like that fucking meme where it's like, what color unicorn did you want again? It's like that fucking meme. It's ridiculous. Because the problem is this: people like Reggie and Jack are being told every year, no, develop more North American talents, then I'll be a big fan. And then everyone's a fan of Team Liquid, Cloud9, TSM with all the fucking imports. Like, people, they're sending a counter signal to what they actually want. So even though I think in theory people want North American talents, the problem is the point where they'd actually be a fan of them because they'd be a good player and win is just too far down the line that, like, I can see why it drives these owners crazy, because it feels like you're being told to do all things simultaneously.
Yeah, you're only allowed to do an all North American roster if you're as competitive as G2. Like that's like the only allowance given. And obviously, like, no one's done that. C9 at their peak last spring was probably the closest we've seen. And no one else has even been like on the same fucking planet conceptually. And that's the mismatched expectations across the board.
Yeah, but I mean, let's also just remind everyone, I don't want to sound like a G2 fanboy, but I know Carlos quite well. And let's, they had a scout. They didn't have all that spending power back in the day. They were an up and coming organization, especially when they initially rebranded. They didn't get given a bunch of VC money. They got like investment money, and they had to give up equity and everything. It was built in a more traditional business, right? So they had to go out and they had to scout players. They had to discover players like Sven, Miffy, all of this stuff going right the way back then. And then Americans came along and went, yeah, cheers for scouting those players. We'll fucking have that. Yeah. Look at us, guys. We've cracked it. Aren't we the best? And so the G2's had to essentially rebuild itself time and time again. You know how they do that? Good foundations, good scouting, and an awareness of
less
what
restrictive
talent is
poaching
around
rules. Less restrictive poaching rules.
All right. I suppose I will. Hey,
rules.
I'm a guy that broke that story like twice, and we all know it fucking happened, and I don't care what Carlos says. But, poaching rules are a little bit silly, frankly. We don't have them in Counter-Strike.
We definitely didn't get it right the first time. To be clear, I'm not advocating for our current poaching rule system. There's definitely some overhauling that probably needs to be done. But I would say definitely from an LCS GM perspective, structurally it's a lot easier when you're at the top of Europe to like maintain your presence. in the circumstance where like when the poaching rules are way less restrictive, you're able to have way more frank conversations so people can make more educated decisions. I think a lot of obviously issues we suffer from in North America are a lot of people making a lot of uneducated decisions.
I always thought people would just like, it was just the sheer paucity of imagination when it came to poaching. Like anyone who gets caught by a poaching rule, you're just a joke. Like I would literally just say to a player I want to play with next year, why don't we both just start learning Sanskrit? Listen, if fucking Riot can get on that shit and figure out what we're saying, fair play. They deserve to put us down.
Yeah, I mean,
all I'm saying is you'll never catch me. I'll be speaking fucking Zinibal Ganubi. I don't give a fuck. You'll never catch me.
Riot isn't exactly subpoenaing Discord logs, so
exactly.
it's definitely wild west.
Let's also be real. They don't give a fuck because, like, to Riot Games, it's a very trivial and petty thing. They only ever really take it seriously when they want to kick someone out the league. You know, I
wonder what that's
all right, you keep going.
So I calls them as I sees them. So you know, the reality is there that actually that's another rule that they should probably just assess while they're here because it's so selectively enforced, and we all know it goes on. Players having pool parties with each other, owners reaching out to other players to reach out to other players, and they could
presidents being shit and streaming.
The point I was making is that's obviously like 1,000 times more prevalent in my opinion in the LEC, whereas because it's not nearly as prevalent here because we are considerably more strict in my opinion, that's why we don't have like a real free agency in North America. Like relative to what traditional sports free agencies look like ours is a joke in comparison.
And that's a fair comment as well, I think. But you know,
I mean, we literally added a rule to allow TSM to give Bjergsen equity so he would stay.
Yeah.
I don't know how to better personify that.
That's what I also love about the fact Reginald, of all people, has the fucking temerity to step into this conversation. You're a guy who they literally allowed, allegedly, to use fucking tourist visas for your player to play professionally in LCS. Then when other people started bringing in top talents from Europe, including someone in this call, magically they had to get a fucking visa or their player can't play. Then we have a scenario where your player gets grandfathered in despite playing far less than others. You're so stupid you don't use that to stack championships. You wait like 3 years before attempting to abuse that rule, at which point in time you make some of the worst signings ever and fuck your whole team up. So like the idea of Reginald of all people is like, when is Riot going to cut me a bloody break? Like mate, at this point in time, they're like, right Reginald, you can only kill 4 more people and you get away with the murder. Like, this is ridiculous.
Well, they only
gets a parking ticket.
They only injected like 3 more grandfathered imports. They only had like Danan, or they had Svenskera and they had Thorin. They were just collecting at that point, right?
Exactly.
All right.
Could have made a mad edgy joke there. I didn't do it.
Let's make it through the first episode.
It's all right. I'll type it in the thing here for y'all, just for y'all benefit.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. I do think we should take a quick bathroom break, but I do want, when we get back, I do want to talk about what we think should happen with the import rules. And because personally, going back to what Thorin said at the beginning of this, I also am in favor of seeing the best competition. And for me, one of the central problems of League of Legends is that I am denied watching all of the good players in one place, basically for the whole year, because inevitably some of these guys are on teams that are the 4th, 5th best teams in China or Korea. So I don't even get to watch them at international events because they don't even qualify. And the burden of watching all of the regions is actually like more than a full-time job. If you were to watch all 4 major regions, every game that happens, this is why people like me, you know, formerly, although I do watch many of the major games these days, but if you look at people like LS or Dom who are co-streaming right now, they're on all the time because it's so hard to watch and keep up with this game at a top professional level because there are too many matches. And I think that this is really the core of what many people are complaining about when it comes to the owners, because they want to be competitive at that level. And I think what's missed here is that this isn't really a business. Like, it is a business to these guys, but Reggie and Jack, they want to win. Like, they're just incredibly competitive people. And the fact that they are not allowed to win is actually, I think, one of the fundamental frustrations for them that we have to take into consideration.
Yeah, that's directly causing their reaction.
Yeah.
Obviously, inside the game.
Not excusing it.
No.
Also called being a spoilt child. Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, don't worry, Richard. Yeah, the guys who have actual Lambos and live in mansions are going,
wait.
this is all I've got from this bloody game, this Lambo and this mansion. I'm not even allowed to win the World Championship.
Wait,
It's
Richard,
bloody
if
unfair,
they're spoiled, is it their fault or is it Riot's for spoiling them in the first place?
Is it the parents' fault for spoiling the child?
Yeah, we just go on for another 2 hours if we start getting into riots.
All right, let's take a little break and let's come back and talk about how this could look in the future, because I do think that this is, this isn't happening for no reason, and I do think that there are a lot of frustrating aspects of the League of Legends competitive scene that I think we're coming to a head on, and that we actually do need to solve in a larger global sense. So we'll come back and chat about those solutions in just a few minutes. All right, quick break there, guys. We're back now, and I want to focus on...
It is ridiculous, Monty, that you need to do fucking a line of cocaine just to fucking get through a podcast these days. So,
it's only 11 a.m.
I thought I had substance abuse problems. Like, you know what I mean?
No, I just go for the coffee instead. But when I drink too much, then we're here where I just have to pee really badly and stop the show. But yeah, I do want to talk about where this goes, because I think a lot of people are there's kind of levels of this. So everybody got in hysterics because they're upset about the possibility of LCS not having imports anymore, which is obviously opening up all the imports. So this was obviously where they would start, but that ignores the fact that you would have to get rid of region locking for all regions. That is just true. People were not focusing on that topic of conversation. And then the other thing people aren't focusing on is, where is this even coming from? And to my mind, the frustration here from the LCS owners, and why many of them are looking to, try and remove this rule, presumably only for them, even though that would never happen, it would happen for everybody, is because there is still a lack of international competition where they can show their stuff, and LCS teams' ability, these team owners' ability, not even LCS teams. Understand that this is coming from a place of vanity. Reggie and Jack want to be the best team in the world. Now, I don't think they particularly care that they're an LCS team or not. I don't think that's their goal. I think their goal is to be competitive on a global stage because it gives them potentially more money and prestige, which is totally reasonable. If you're a very competitive person, I would be in that same boat if I was still a team owner. But what we're focusing on here is that is the core issue. And it's a problem. We've reached a problem within League of Legends where we still have insufficient international competition compared to most other major esports. And because of the region locking, these teams have kind of hit their peak. Like, we're not going to see like TSM or LCS or Cloud9 viewership get larger, and they've kind of tapped the available pool of players that they have to improve their rosters, even with some of the biggest signings we've ever seen in League of Legends history, like Perks coming over to LCS. But that's not enough because they still want to win. So to me, the core of this issue is really that they don't have the capacity to win under the current system. And there's a lack of international competition for them to prove that they are good. And obviously, this has probably also been stoked by the pandemic. If I'm Jack, I'm super salty that Cloud9 didn't get to compete during spring at their peak last year at MSI, where I think they legitimately had a shot at making finals. I think that's not outrageous to say, given their form at that point in time. And that might have been Cloud9's best opportunity to place well at an international event ever.
And honestly, that might have been, I'll be like the really extreme perspective that I think is true. That might have been the only chance NA has within probably the next several years, unless we change things. Like, just to be super honest, when I look at the current landscape, where players are landing after this free agency period, like, that's just what it looks like.
Yeah. And so for me, my level of frustration is, as I alluded to before the break, I want to watch all the best players competing against each other. That is what esports has always been for me, because I come from a time before region locking existed and everything was just international. And I grew up watching StarCraft on OGN, where there were 1 or 2 non-Korean players in these leagues, right? And it was a miracle when Jinro is making top 4 in GSL. And I didn't care because I just wanted to watch the best competition. And it was a fun storyline when Jinro did that. But to me, it was not really about Jinro. It was just about watching the best players. So I still want that. And I understand that regionalization has been key to Riot's development of these leagues, and it has been very successful, and I acknowledge that. But in my mind, the time has come for us to create a region-free, league, super league on top of everything. And this wouldn't be like Champions League where the existing teams qualify. This would be an entirely new franchise structure where teams have
basically
to
like
apply.
Overwatch League. You have an Overwatch League for League of Legends.
Yes. And to people,
but obviously not with all the baggage of all the negative things, which means the premise.
And people will say like, oh, well, Overwatch League hasn't been doing well, and that's true. But they didn't develop the grassroots regional
They didn't have
scenes
a
first.
huge game with a massive player base, of course.
They didn't have the player base, and I'm not saying I say change nothing about LCS except for do what Danan said and maybe roll back the region free residency rules, right? So you keep that there, and presumably you're keeping the fans of LCS happy who do want to watch these North American talents. Now, what you do when you create this Super League is you have all of these leagues that people can pick from. And people will say, well, Overwatch League was mostly Korean. You weren't paying attention. Actually, what happened with Overwatch League is that Western players became better, and we saw the playing field level out. The last 2 champions has been a mixed Korean and Western roster, and Koreans were very dominant
the MVP
at the start.
was North American as well a couple of years
ago.
Yeah,
Koreans were very dominant at the start, but once you put all these players into the same league at the elite level, you actually saw significantly more parity because there was a chance for those guys to learn in Korean solo queue. If you have everybody over there or in the same region, it also levels it up. One thing that we saw with Overwatch League was when all the best players came to live in LA for the first 2 years, is that solo queue in NA went from the worst to the best. So the practice was exceptional in North America for the teams because there were, 100 professional players that were suddenly all playing solo queue at the same time because scrim blocks are always scheduled for the same time. So when they were out of their scrims, they would just go into queue and it was really good. So it's not that people wouldn't be able to compete, guys. And in fact, we might see early Korean or Chinese dominance. But my theory would be that in a few years, first off, we would definitely have European teams good enough to compete in that league. You would have full European rosters or European rosters with an American player or two, because they're already in World Championships of League of Legends at 2 of the last 3 years. So I think that this would actually be the best thing. And if you actually did a format where you were moving all of the teams to like Shanghai for a couple months, you run a tournament, and then you go to Los Angeles and you run a tournament, then you go to Berlin and you run a tournament, right? You can hit all of the major regions, and you actually have a way to watch all the best players where it isn't a full-time job to see one of 60 different teams across the major regions, which is just, it's ridiculous that we have to go through this when all I want to do is watch the best competition.
Well, I'll chime in there. Because that was one of the solutions that I was going to propose, but it's not the one. It's not the one I would naturally lean into. I think the way League of Legends is structured, they have managed to create something that is similar to the Dota setup, but not as inherently destructive to the esports fabric, in the sense that they have one huge event, right, a year, but because they have a franchise league around it and it's not just the fucking wilderness for the other fucking, 48 weeks or whatever, right, per year, people don't just think about Worlds. They have a league structure. They have to keep the lights on in the meantime. You've got to beat your regional opponents, get ahead of them. There's all this stuff that's going on. You're on a regular featured broadcast. So there's lots to think about. If you come in and do this Super League, and you said, and you would keep LCS going as well, this is what you end up with here is you get like, a TSM, a Team Liquid, a Cloud9 from North America. They go in, G2, your Fnatic, etc. They go in, you get best Chinese teams, your best Korean teams. And then all of a sudden, like the teams that are left behind, all you've done there is essentially create, in terms of how you farm talent, I think you'll see a bigger disparity in terms of the ability. Like the teams who are playing in that league, you're absolutely right. Like we saw with the Overwatch League. Well, I use that term lightly. And obviously no one really saw it. We heard about it. Right, but like we saw, North American players, European players, they got better. They did close that skill gap that when it was all Korean. We thought it was all going to be Korean lineups initially. But the problem would be if you had those other leagues where it was like you didn't even have a TSM or a Cloud9 to play against. What do you think happens to those teams that don't even need to raise their game because they're suddenly the top dog? Not because they leapfrogged the team, but because that team just said, "See you, we're off to go make more money." This is one of the big resistances we've had to the famous League hugely touted European Super League. Not only because it would devalue in football, that is, not only because it would devalue the Champions League, but it would also devalue every domestic league that would potentially feed into it. Now, yeah, bunch of Emirati money and everyone, those teams, those like 16 teams or whatever would be, yeah, they're set for life. They've got a license to print money. Their games would, command a bigger fee for the pay-per-view model that we use and all that. But what it does to the fabric of the game is a huge concern, and this is why people have been resistant against it. I think a much better solution would be for Riot Games to just simply introduce, scattered over the course of a season, some international competitions, some legitimate international competitions that aren't just like a one-shot, aren't just a tournament bracket, but, are a bit structured like a league, do take place over a period of a week rather than a weekend, and give an opportunity to teams. I don't know how they would get there, how you would decide that, but give an opportunity for those guys to basically have regular, but not too regular, so you devalue worlds competition against better regions and better teams. We've already seen a bit of that with stuff like All-Stars and everything, but I think, if you look at the Dota circuit, how they've moved to, they identified the destructive force that was TI, having one tournament a year that everyone cares about, and no one gives a fuck the rest of the time, and they started bringing in the majors. Be good for League of Legends, maybe, Riot Games, to come back to some of those tournament organizers that they absolutely fucked over when they made LCS. Maybe get back to them and say, hey, do you want to run an international tournament for us? Like, they're eating well over there at Riot. It's all Tencent owned now anyway. Who gives a fuck about all battles? So I think that would be a much better solution. I think a Super League, it's good in the short term for the teams in it, but it kills grassroots league.
So I don't know if that's true, because we've actually seen like the French league grow substantially, even though it is basically a feeder league in principle for LEC, right? And I think that there's enough current stability in many of these esports circuits to support a 16-team Super League on top of it and still keep everything compelling for regional fans, right?
I would say this, right, which is, I'm not really on the side of like whether or not this would do well in the league, but I mean, Monty's original premise of if you want to reverse engineer a world in which, without just letting everyone buy all the Koreans, a North American or a European team could be the best in the world, it is essentially, the most obvious thing is increase the exposure time to the best players.
Yes.
I mean, essentially, I can tell you from other games, this is how it works. When we referred earlier to StarCraft, right, in those days, when if you made a tournament of the top 16 teams in the world, players in the world, 15 would be Koreans. There's a reason the one non-Korean was my boy Nanawa. He was going and living in Korea for like half the time, so that, yeah, he'd take the beatings for the first 3 months, then he'd get good, then his level would be high, and then he could compete. Similarly, in Counter-Strike, we know this only too well, because we've actually had like a reduced aspect. We essentially had two regions. We had Europe, which was the best, we were the Koreans, and North America was the underdog region, which maybe the absolute best team could possibly have a chance at winning the European major, as it were, right? That's like League of Legends now. Counter-Strike 2 years ago, the best team in the world was a North American team. It was Team Liquid. And part of that reason why, by the way, is because they didn't just stay in North America, beat all the North American teams, then once a year go to a major and go, holy fuck, is that Fnatic? Oh my God, fuck, that's Astralis. They were playing those guys every weekend.
Yep.
So, listen, if you weren't as good, you'll never be better. But the point is, it just removes all those things of like, I'm an underdog, or like, wow.
Look at the Luminosity SK roster, the Brazilians.
Let me just throw this last thing in as well. I'll say this as well. We even have a mad control group, which is last year. Because last year, when Americans couldn't travel and play Europeans, and by the way, there's a double element to that, which is, since we have an open circuit in Counter-Strike, you also get to practice the Europeans if they come to an IEM in Chicago or San Jose, because they're going to be there for the week, so it improves your practice, kind of like Monty's example of an Overwatch League and the solo queue going up. So basically, when we had 2020 and there was no international travel, not only did the Americans, when they finally came to Europe at the end of the year, no joke, like drop half their level, But in the meantime, they all said, without like a tournament circuit where, you know, the European teams come in and practice, they said the practice just got worse and worse and worse and worse in North America until eventually, you know, you actually had like 3 or 4 teams and everything else was just a waste of time. So like, that's not like a hard and fast rule, but I would just say those trends do imply to me, if you ever want the best European, North American player to be as competitive, he has to play the Koreans and the Chinese, even if it's just psychologically. Like I always said this about my boy Doublelift. If Doublelift really played 10 fucking years playing Uzi and all those guys every 2 months, he wouldn't be shitting his pants like 7 worlds in, would he? He'd either have gotten over it or he'd be the biggest choker of all time. It'd be one of the two. Whereas in this scenario, like realistically, he got what, like 10 shots in it his whole career? 10.
Yeah.
You know, like that's not as big a sample size as people think.
Well, I was gonna say, I usually pick myself the idealist, but you guys are maybe being a little bit more excited about this idea than I am. I think my struggle is like looking through the politics of how decisions are made for League of Legends. This seems like some weird
pipe dream.
This is like a weird alternate universe I'm living in, like being rewritten by Marvel.
I typically try to live
Marvel-
in an
Marvel-
universe as
Marvel-
regards
you
League of
got-
Legends from Riot
Look,
Games, believe it or
look.
not. Danan, you know.
Look, as
and like manifesting a thing. But where I'm at is looking at it saying, I don't think you can do much like structurally to the global calendar unless you have 3 of the major regions on board and the global team for League of Legends. So when I hear, you know, Super League, when I hear like these big structural changes that have impacts on these like technically permanent franchising partnerships that we just laid, like we literally just franchised LCK. I think LPL is like implementing their like salary cap right now. There's so many things going on that like even if we pretended to say we're going to do this over the next 10 years, it's still just, it wouldn't manifest. Even if you took your vision of what we want to do and implemented it right now and said we're going to fast track it as fast as we can, we still wouldn't even get there in my opinion in 10 years. So I'm having a really hard time attaching or relating to the idea. And,
well,
and
really
look, what does that speak to about our sport?
Yeah, look, I think you could do it. But I like as a fan, I want this because I want one place to watch all the best players because it's infuriating to me that I can't do that. And it is.
I like the way Monty keeps going back to that. He doesn't go to like, you know, it'd be great for the
No, it's good for Monty.
Why can't I just watch all the best games and know everything in one week without having to watch 700 games? This is unfair.
I used to be able to do that in 2014 when I was casting LCK.
That really is
I got to watch all the best players in one place. It was awesome. It was the best year of esports ever. I just want that back. Yeah, transparently. Okay. Now, here's why this is terrifying to me. In order to do this, you would have to franchise, right, the Super League. Now, Now, this is good for Riot, but probably not good for every other esport or the esports scene in general, in that at this scale, Riot, why they would do it, I think, and why they could do it is because you can play Kingmaker at a global scale that would be unprecedented in this industry.
$100 million buy-in.
$100 million buy-in. When you apply for the Super League, you must, you know, have X number of like professional sports partners. We want to see that, you know, in a way, what people don't know is that when franchise hit LCS and LEC, what it did was it created a shotgun wedding where many of the teams had to go out and acquire new investors to become attractive to Riot, right? In order for them to approve their franchising. Now, this would do it at an even bigger scale, right? You would say, hey, you know, European teams, you'd better get Barcelona, Real Madrid, you know, on your, like, as part of your company in order to give us the best possible chance of franchises, or this Premier League team, etc. Now, this would jump the industry pretty significantly in terms of investment, but also what's scary to me about this potentially, I mean, I don't know, I don't think it's going to happen, but if it did happen, what would be scary is that these new esports teams would be by far the biggest on the planet, and they would be very, very beholden to Riot, which would probably create a lot of problems in other games, would be my number one fear.
Well, I mean, not to mention we go back to where we started with Riot Games, which is the first thing. You know, you're not allowed to have a Dota team. You know, let's codify that. If you want to run a tournament that has multiple games, like with the Intel Extreme Masters, you now have to create an entire separate tournament circuit if you want to do that. We won't have our rivals adjacent to it. And Riot has already had at some point in esports a disproportionate amount of influence. And every time Riot has a disproportionate amount of influence over anything, whether it's a professional esports organization or a female employee, they abuse it. So to me, it seems that this would be an absolute nightmare for the the industry holistically.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, when you look at it that way, that's not the way I want to go at all. But I'll also just add this: I think actually there's a financial aspect to it where Riot Games might not be as good as it sounds. $100 million buy-in sounds great on the surface. Maybe 20 teams from all across the world, all the big regions. You throw a Brazilian team in there as well, just so you get the viewership. Yeah, nice. And trust me, they can definitely raise that kind of money in Brazil as well. But then the problem you've got is that worldwide, you're probably talking across all of the leagues, approximately 115 teams, right? On some level, and all of those people have paid millions already into a system where they think they're going to get maximum value because they've handed their money over to a developer. Well, if you create a super league and you say, sorry guys, we were only really interested in these 20 organizations the whole time, they just pack up shop and go to another game or get out of esports altogether. And probably what you've done is, without realizing it, you've created a wonderful golden tipped peak of the pyramid, but the next 2, 3, 4 tiers below all start to crumble. Yeah, and like, listen, what you're talking about, I don't know if it's because your mindset is a little bit different because you did go over to the Overwatch League, and I know to a certain degree you believed a lot in that project in terms of how it was structurally and some of the things that they were trying to do over there. But I think in about 2 years, when we watch the Overwatch League collapse, much like the CGS before it, I think we're going to basically get a written textbook lesson that more people are paying attention to than CGS as to why these types of leagues are usually doomed for failure. And what keeps esports upright isn't having a consolidation of power at the top with big brands and all of that. It's actually having a healthy grassroots
Oh, I agree.
scene above
But
all.
that's why I think this is different than Overwatch League, because we already have a decade of building up these grassroots scene, and we've seen that CBLOL is not killed by the fact that it's not a tier 1 League of Legends competition. The Vietnamese league is not killed by the fact that it's not a tier 1 competition. And I don't think that LCS or LEC or LPL or LCK would be killed by losing some of their players or potentially some of their teams to a larger league. In fact, I think that this is the right way to do it, Richard, as opposed to what Overwatch League did, which was take the top of the pyramid and try and, put it on top of nothing. I think we have the foundation of the pyramid in this game.
Do you want a completely mad question? Here's a mad angle on imports that nobody ever has brought up, but it's actually mad because it shows how pointlessly arbitrary the import rules are. Why is there no import rule on recruiting your coach? It's a real question. Think about it logically.
Yep.
What you're saying with the player is I can't have more than 2 players because they might be better from that region that produces better players. So why are all the coaches allowed to be Korean? I've never understood it, because what it shows to me is you haven't thought through what the philosophy behind what you were doing was. Because, by the way, spoiler, just go have a look at the LCS now. Like, there's fucking million Koreans who are coaching in the league. So to me, if you're going to have an impact on your team, why is that not covered by import rules?
Fair.
Has that ever been discussed by the teams, Danan? Or does everybody just accept it?
This is one of the weird things. Coaching has already been this like super weird, vague thing. Like the only thing we've really changed over the years is like larger allowances of them. So over time, and again, you're gonna love this, we just basically got more protective. Anytime we like found something that we like asserted was a valuable coach, we wanted to like include that in our portfolio. So we increased like the coaches from like having 1 in the GCD to having 2 in the GCD to having 3 in the GCD to having 4. Like that's all we've done iteration wise on it. But yeah, there's never been any consideration or conversation around that. I also think like our coaches globally still aren't at the forefront of a lot of the conversations. They're not super, like, it's weird. Like esports is traditionally more transparent and visible on the talent side. Like you see and interact with players through Twitch and through their social media way more than you do with traditional sports. But even still then, coaches aren't exactly that prevalent, aren't that interacted with, in my opinion, compared to what they should be. So I don't think it's ever going to be a focus until it's like, oh, we suddenly care about 7 of the 10 LCS coaches. And right now, like I said, we literally just changed 100% of our coaches in the last 24 months. I think we changed 9 this last offseason. So with like the massive turnover, it's just not been something that's been at the front of that conversation. And just, if I'm being honest, just lending all the way back to what we're talking about, I don't think anyone cares about the import rules, like in sincerity, like in all honesty. Yes. I think it's like a knee-jerk reaction to LMQ. I think it was a knee-jerk reaction to all the Koreans going to the LPL early on. And then from there, it's just been knee-jerk reactions every time we realize
Yes, agreed.
wasn't correct. And now we're in this like weird spot where like people are really attached to it conceptually as like that's what built our region. But if anything, our region has specifically been fighting those rules tooth and nail constantly every
mate, think how mad this is, Danan. I'll do a little history lesson for people.
and people like moving and shifting things around. And go ahead.
Like, think about this. The exact owners who now want the import rule removed were the ones who wanted it in the first place to stop LMQ maybe taking their spot for Worlds, to stop low-cost Koreans who almost qualified except for internet issues, to stop a super team of fucking ex-CJ Enters players, which was going to come to North America.
100% was going to come, by the way.
Because remember, at that point in time, if you're Cloud9, if you're TSM, you're not going to change your entire roster tomorrow. So you actually want to conserve the fact that, no, it should be about North Americans like I have. And, you know, I've got the best play. Like, in that scenario, this is why I said we also have to, like, discuss this philosophically. Because in my opinion, I think Danan's right? Basically, here's what happened. These owners wake up and whatever doesn't suit them tomorrow and for the next month, just obviously a hyperbole there, they just go, right, change the bloody rules to make it our one. But if next year it's the other way around and it benefits them for it to be the other way around, they'll just argue that way. Now listen, you can do that, of course, as gamesmanship. The problem is, though, we can't have an honest discussion and discourse about what we're going to do in the industry in that sense, because you're just only doing what benefits you in the short term. And that's why actually I think it's dirty that they then tie it to ideals like, but our fans expect us to win Worlds. Oh, but what does the North American fan, he wants to win. You don't give a fuck about that. That's not why you're doing anything. You're pushing your business interests, and usually, in some cases, not even business, you just want to win. Which, by the way, is totally fine. That's a totally legitimate reason. But I agree. I think they're masking like a bigger topic behind like their own short-term sort of concerns, basically.
But this is why I think the solution that I was talking about, it fixes all of these things, right? Because so we keep the LCS franchise leagues as they are. If anything, actually, maybe to create space in the calendar, maybe shave one or two orgs that don't really bring a lot of value on it, like, and just say, thanks for playing. I know you invested. Here's some of your money back. And there must be a clause, by the way, if at any point a team is just there lurking and you just think, I don't like the look of these.
That will never be used, Richard. There is.
Sure, but if it exists, there is a possibility to, I think, fix all of the problems we've talked about. So this is what I believe would be good for League of Legends, and I think it literally ticks all of the boxes. I think it'd be good for the fans. I think it'd be good for the orgs. I think it would be good for the development of regional talent. I think it would be good for Riot. So what you do is you keep the LCS as they are. We've got to create some space on the calendar. Fine. You then, because you can't burden yourself as Riot Games with it, you have to go back to some of your original tournament organizing partners. There's no MLG anymore. There's no IPL anymore. There is still an Intel Extreme Masters, who I'm sure would love to get League of Legends.
I'll take a league tournament, Richard.
Right. Okay. And so what you do is you then create an international tournament. Think about how sick IPL 5 was. Like, who doesn't remember that? Right. And so you create an international tournament based on some premise, something they've done in a split, something they've done in a league, maybe some like undetermined criteria, and you go and you play that international tournament. Now we've got international tournaments back on the menu, especially ones that Riot is outsourcing. All they have to do is pick up the phone and say, don't have Richard Lewis anywhere near it. And then they've covered all of their bases that they need to do operationally. And so now those players get to play against international level teams that you're talking about, like Duncan's talking about. Over time, they will get better if we have, one or two or three of those a year. But also, it will satiate that desire to win for the owners. Because winning now isn't about one tournament a year. Beating the best isn't about one tournament a year. You have the opportunity to beat the best at some smaller events in a lesser scale. Might not mean as much as winning Worlds, but you can beat the Chinese, you can beat the Koreans at these international tournaments. And slowly but surely, if you win one of those, if you're a North American owner, you go, look, guys, remember when we did that? Remember, and think about Fnatic getting to the final of that IPL 5, and that was like a mad thing.
But I think, see, Richard, as much as I would personally love that, I think Danan, there's already a stratification of the haves and have-nots within these regions, right? And it's very hard to break this cycle because there is no draft in order for you to get a top-tier prospect. There is no salary cap, so you can just get completely dominated by the top teams in the league. And that would create a cycle where it would be almost impossible to break like the C9 liquid stranglehold on North America, because the more events they would qualify for, the more top talent they would attract, the more money they would have from sponsorship to spend on these players. So it creates this positive feedback loop.
Yeah, but this is why, because I mean, like, you know, that by the way, that argument would infinitely apply to the Super League idea. But then what you do is, you've got to find a way to sneak in those teams that maybe aren't going to be there week in, week out on LCS, which, by the way, let's not pretend that if we do something like this, that those guys aren't going to have a method where they could easily overtake a TSM or a Cloud9. One of the things that isn't being talked about here, people, it's kind of obfuscated by the broader debates we're talking about, is right now the system that they've got actually helps TSM. It hurts them internationally, TSM and Cloud9, but it helps them stay on top regionally, right? Yes. So what you can do there is, again, have a wild card tournament. Have one where the big boys just have to fucking sit one out, and you send them on a fucking photo op tour, or give them a fucking holiday in Maui or whatever, just to fucking chill them the fuck out.
An NIT tournament.
Yeah, and you space out the ability for these teams to qualify for these international tournaments in ways that are interesting and fun and can build narratives into your league. These things are all possible. We used to have it when League of Legends for a year or two leaned into the open circuit. The problem was Riot Games at that time were obsessed with control and obsessed with profit, and it's what's
at
always
the time.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say,
but it's only got worse. So we had a successful open circuit that would have seen regions like grow and develop equally. We've moved away from that to maximize value domestically. We've created these franchise leagues, and we've made it all about Worlds as some sort of holy grail. And of course, people like Reginald and Jack who want to win are going to look at that league and look at that trophy and go, without that, I have nothing. You start sprinkling into a calendar meaningful tournaments, suddenly that isn't true anymore. And there's nothing to say that in a year or two they couldn't claim one of them. All you need is the miracle tournament run.
As someone inside, it still definitely feels like we're someone says my mic is losing its mind. Is you guys all right?
No, we can hear you. Okay.
Right,
cool. I can hear you fine.
As someone who's inside, it still sounds and kind of feels like you're trying to fight gravity. I think if you want to work towards a Super League, and I think if you want to see better high-level competition, ultimately, and again, I don't necessarily agree entirely with the take, but I think one of the steps for that would just be to release the restrictions as they are. I think if we wanted to say what is going to make the LCS the premier League of Legends product, I don't think it's as simple, and I don't think it's as straightforward as asking Riot to do more international competition. I think they've already exampled very clearly they don't agree. They literally got rid of Katowice. They got rid of Rift Rivals.
Yep.
And they've obviously downsized and moved pieces around to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't actually happen anymore. And I'm pretty confident, if I had to guess why, that's just because they don't want it to undermine MSI and they don't want it to undermine Worlds. If I'm being honest, I would not be shocked at all if they've had conversations on their end where they feel like MSI undermines Worlds, right? Worlds is their, in my opinion, premier product. So I think you're really fighting not only Riot, but obviously all the leagues aren't going to buy into that. This is the one unique circumstance right now where we have what appears to be 10 teams who are all vaguely pointed in the same direction, which is really, really rare, just a heads up. And I think if you really wanted to work towards your Super League, it wouldn't be as this grand gesture of an idea and we roll out and we get everyone on board, as much as it would be subversion. We come in through releasing the import restrictions. We accept that the teams that come to the LCS market, whether that's the ones that stay or whether that's Chinese billionaires come and buy half the league. I think if we are the most valuable market, we think we might be, there's an absolute reality where we bring the best talent over here, and instead of what you're talking about, where we're trying to materialize this in full, we iterate over time and we meet in the middle and still allow Riot to have their vague idea of control of what they see and how they want to iterate on Worlds and the things they've been doing already, while we bring the best teams together and look forward. This has already been a struggle, to be clear. For example, when we bootcamp for Worlds, guess where we go? Where do you think we go? Korea. Every time. We all go to Korea, right? We go there for a month. Yep. I've advocated in the past that Riot should mandate that the bootcamp is inside the Worlds region. So if Worlds is in NA, the bootcamp is mandated in Chicago. All Worlds teams that qualify must arrive a month before Worlds, and they must play at least in or adjacent to Chicago, low ping effectively, in order to help energize that region, and that travels around, right? Now that is like a small breadcrumb of an idea that could actually turn into something inside the politics of what's going on. But I think anything that's more aggressive or more severe, you're not going to be able to get enough people on board. And right now, the only thing that matters are the franchise partners in Riot. I really want to like empathize and say like players should have a really big voice in this. I really want to empathize and say, you know, fans should be brought on. But again, we're talking the global scale of what's going on. It's really hard to actually get a read on what like the global fan base wants. And also trusting and assuming that the ones that we're hearing are the educated ones that actually are in position to follow up on what they're saying. We're like, we're going to watch this season, we're going to watch this event. Like, there's just too many things to move around. And I think something like this, funny enough, maybe the owners are going like a terrible way about explaining it, and trying to like deflect and point at like, I don't know, NA talent development or something is like part of it. But realistically, I think doing that is like probably the only thing that gets you close to your guys' idea.
I also think that there's not only value in that idea, Danan, but there's value in mandating that all teams, like shortening the season slightly, and then mandating that preseason all teams go to the same region, like Korea, or at least be, you know, if the teams are in China, they can at least play on the Korean server. A lot of teams
normally go to Korea in December, so that wouldn't even be abnormal. That's like,
but not enough of them
got to make more space, and not long enough. Yeah.
So
I mean, a lot of that's also free agency. It's all the way back in November when it could be much sooner, but they don't want to like do anything during. It's a whole thing, right?
Also, can we get rid of all stars because it's a waste of time?
The other thing to me as well that makes this whole discussion weird is I think even people who do in theory want the best for League of Legends, they're trying to like solve the entire problem with the home run every time. The scenario has to be, right, how do we, let's face it, it's really just TSM. How do we reverse engineer it so TSM wins Worlds? Because people somehow imagine, right, if we fix that, then it's all done. That's like that fucking old saying that like, you know, if you want to invent a sandwich, you have to like invent the entire universe first. Like, that's a ridiculous premise. Well, my premise would be this.
You're still being generous, by the way.
Sure. My premise would be this, right? If there's all this money in North America to invest in esports, and there's all these viewers in America who want to, why can't we just make it so that the end goal is that if you're a North American org, you have a lot of success in America? Why would parlaying that success into then going to China and winning a different tournament that's vaguely watched by the same, why would that be the end goal? Like, to me, logically, this is why it comes to things like tournament format. I think that the format they have for LCS specific to NA is inappropriate. I think they probably should have a circuit that maybe it is a fucking road show. Maybe it's different formats of tournaments. Find out what American fans want.
Lock-in was really successful.
We're trying to fix like the whole problem by going to well, if the team that I like wins the whole thing, doesn't that make the whole system correct? Like, to me, you start on the fundamental level.
And that's why I was saying you're being generous. I don't think TSM winning Worlds actually would solve this ultimately.
It doesn't, but they see that as like the talisman, you know.
If we generally were able to ask what everyone wanted, which is like the 10 owners, LCS proper, even like the global team a little bit for parity's sake, as well as fans and players, they would say they want North America to be relevant and consistent and capable. Like, I think NA making finals 2 or 3 times in a row would probably be enough. They don't even have to win. But I actually think like one hit wondering, TSM winning World Championship would be exactly like what we just saw here, where TSM just like won an NA championship and then replaced 4 out of 5 of their players because nobody was clearly being fulfilled there.
Also, what happened when CLG made an MSI final? Nothing, remember? And like,
exactly.
Or C9 made top 4 at Worlds. Nothing happened after that. So we've had, some degree of that international success. And here's the other problem: is one of the reasons why LCS isn't competitive is because not all of the teams are even motivated financially to be competitive. At this point in time, this year, guys, I hate to break it to you, the reason why you're seeing so many players you haven't heard of before is not because the NA owners suddenly want to take on a whole bunch of rookies. It's because there isn't a financial incentive to go from 8th place to 5th place in LCS. There's no reason to spend the money. So what teams are doing is that they're trying to hit hit gold. They're out there prospecting, heading west to San Francisco to like pan for gold in a river. But most people who do that didn't get rich. Spoiler, guys. They didn't get rich. 1 in a million got rich. But you know what? It wasn't expensive to do that, right? You're not building a mine. You're just up there, up to your knees in cold water looking for gold nuggets in a creek, right?
Can I unfortunately combat this really quickly with some
Sure.
insight?
Yeah,
it's
please.
funny. I think what you're pointing to is probably a handful of teams for sure. But what's funny is it's kind of the opposite. Like, it's weird. Like, it's almost maybe I'll be super critical and say hypocritical. To look at it where you're saying, people don't want to spend money to go to 8th to 5th. But in my opinion, that's kind of like, for example, what 100 Thieves did, right? They spent a reasonable amount of money that I'm not disclosing to acquire effectively the entirety of my roster sans top laner. And I don't know if we have insanely high confidence. They're looking all right now, but do we have confidence that 100 Thieves is just the standout top 2 that they're going to win? Right?
No, I think they're top 4.
Probably 3rd or 4th.
There's an absolute reality. There's an absolute reality where they spent a considerable amount of money just so they could get, maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th, especially in the current landscape. Same thing with FlyQuest. Presumably they paid Jack a real amount of money to acquire and transition in their roster. And we genuinely, obviously there's just a weird circumstance where they were 2nd and now they're trying to reel and figure things out. But I still find it I'm still looking at it and saying, people are still spending a lot of money. And ultimately, I don't think that's going to manifest itself into a top 2 performance. And if that happens, those owners are going to be in the exact same position that I think these owners are right now, where they're like, oh man, I spent all this money and I just didn't win.
But my point is that there isn't a revenue structure that's in place at LCS that is incentivizing that top level of performance outside of making worlds.
I was agreeing with you that there's no incentive, but they're still doing it anyways. That's my confusion.
Well, some teams are. I mean, I think some teams have given up. But I think when you look at that is also an issue that I'm just saying it's an issue that needs to be addressed, which is that there isn't enough financial incentive based on the revenue sharing in order to motivate bottom teams.
Yeah.
And it's very easy just to sit there at the bottom forever.
Yeah, but
by the way, to tie into what Monty's saying as well, by the way, is there's another element, which is if you actually know about Overwatch, this is essentially what they've just done over the last year. A lot of owners, if they didn't have the team that was basically going to win the Overwatch League, they just cynically shed their roster and just signed basically just warm bodies to fit in the chairs. Yep. With the logic being, well, if I'm not winning anyway, I'm just keeping my foot in the door for this year. So why spend loads of money to come 9th place or something? So I don't think it's obviously as extreme in LCS, but I agree. I saw some of those rosters, Monty, in the off-season. And here's the thing, right? Yes, of course there will be NA talent who comes through. But the idea that you're going to do a rogue Mad Lions and have teams that have 4 or 5 rookies and they're going to all make it and become... It's not going to happen. That even beggars belief from the person who might have the rookie. Maybe Parlofox is the next guy. The point is, what are the odds 3 people on his team are? So I do think some of that has gone on. And I think basically if you're not these teams shooting for the moon, I think a lot of people are more I'll spend half as much, but just be almost competitive.
It's kind of interesting to me because I see people in the chat talking about CLG. I think probably the dirty secret is CLG spent money and fucking failed. So,
well,
they
had other issues. Broxa couldn't get here. I think they will be better, to be fair to CLG. But yeah, I agree.
Well, the only way is up, isn't it? So yeah, that's a safe bet, I think.
I also heard in the off-season they were a team trying to make a super team or something. Just a bit of dirt for people if they want.
Yeah. Well, let me posit a question to you guys. Obviously, I'm on the inside. For you guys on the outside, do you feel like winning in the LCS is valuable or is worth it right now?
First of all, I take umbrage with the idea that you're an insider and I'm an outsider. I've forgotten more about your team than you'll ever know. But anyway, I like the premise. No, I get the premise. So what was the question again?
I was just positing whether or not winning is worth the money that you spend in the league right now. I'm curious what you guys think.
That's actually kind of what I was alluding to before. Basically, what I was getting at before is this. Another problem with this whole discussion that maybe only me and Richard will immediately see, just because, listen, you all were born in the Matrix. You never saw the real world with human eyes. All I'll say is this. Again, if you're not from America, part of you does just think, it's fun to have conversations with the Americans. Now, who gives a fuck about them? Let's go on with life. So I think to myself of all the other regions, right? So when I think to myself, if I'm an LPL team, the end goal, by the way, if I'm an LPL team, isn't to win Worlds. That is absolutely not. That would actually be considered a bonus that would come with my main goal, which is be far and away the #1 LPL team, market to all of China, monetize all my fans, get all the sick deals or everything, right? The problem with this, in my opinion, it's why I kind of alluded to it before, was Why is LCS not even vaguely, at least publicly, messaging that that's what they're going for? My goal, if I'm Reginald, isn't win worlds. It's that just by being #1 in North America, I'm the most profitable company in all of League of Legends esports. Or I then parlay that into my other esports ventures. Yeah, basically the end goal is just make money, isn't it? Like,
Right.
just be successful and make money. So what I'm kind of getting to in that sense is, I don't think it is worth it, Danan. Like, basically, I think the only reason you try to win LCS is to then parlay it into the worlds thing, and then this weird like cargo cult effect where it's like, but if I win worlds, then I become SK Telecom. It's like, not really. But I can see why that might seem like it made sense. I don't think it makes.
Well,
I don't think it matters if you win LCS. Really,
I do take umbrage to this because, like, I never cared about LCS, right? You have to remember that by the time LCS started, I was already casting Korean League of Legends in Korea, right? That happened after I moved and had already completed a season of Champions. So I never cared about LCS. The reason why I care about LCS, guys, is not, again, I care about watching the best teams in the world. I do it because people who speak my language and watch my content care about LCS for some reason that is beyond me. Okay? So that is the only reason I engage in LCS. If I had the choice to never watch an LCS game again, I would take that if my content could remain the same level of popularity, right? I would take
I mean,
that.
for me, to answer the question, does winning in the LCS have value commensurate to the amount of money you spend on it? This is, again, this is a question that is as old as time and has a very, it's an answer that if a lot of these team owners would kind of just like look at the lessons we learned in esports, that's one thing that seems to happen. Everyone who comes in thinks they're going to break the paradigm and reinvent the wheel and all this other stuff. It's like, no, there have been successful people before you in an industry that's 20 years old. You can learn some lessons, you know, if you just have a little look at it, but no, everyone thinks they know best. But anyway, the value in the team and the value with sponsors isn't in excellence. That's something that comes later. The first thing you need to do on day one is be compelling to establish a fan base. And this is why when you look at G2, which by the way, I mean, you know, that is a deconstruction of one of the worst names ever, Gamers 2, which Carlos himself even admits, right?
Which is a samurai for some reason also.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that cunt did choose the name Ocelot as his actual name and unironically unaware that furries exist.
Yeah. So yeah, he needs to be careful at certain parties. But anyway, the reality is, you know, take for example, like one of the biggest fails in the league right now is Counter Logic Gaming. The reason CLG
still one of the best names of all time.
Yes, yeah. So the reason that they are down there and sort of have this, you know, perception of lack of value isn't because they don't have a roster with no names on there. You know, they've got Broxafin, like Wild Turtles on the roster, so, you know, these are all people that can have value just in terms of being a name that people know, an aspirational element for fans. Don't say it, Thorin, I know your views, right? But then the other problem you've got is sponsors don't really care about that. It's all about engagement metrics and growth and them thinking that there's going to be eyeballs on their products or fans might go out and purchase their products. You don't have to win games to get that. Right? The thing that should be lighting a fire under your ass to win games, apart from the competitive drive, which we all know 99% of these American fucking GMs don't really have. There's a difference between being competitive and not liking to lose, right? Those are not the same things, right? Being a spoiled little cunt turning the board over doesn't mean you know how to win. But anyway, the thing with CLG is they've taken a brand that should have a ton of value. It's got the one thing you cannot purchase in esports, which is tenure, credibility. They have that. They were around at the start. But they don't do anything with that because the people behind that org don't know how to leverage it. It's incompetence. That's the problem. And then when you're incompetent in the boardroom and incompetent on the server, that's the type of brand that disappears from, you know, the thought process of the average esports fan. Why would you be a CLG fan now, say, over a Team Liquid, over EG back in the
That was the
days?
direction Dignitas was actually going for a long time too.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. Like, I mean, at least Dig sort of did a hard reset, and Dignitas have done reasonably well, you know, in the league. Paid some crazy money in not so recent times, and definitely have some washed up fuckers on their roster. But you know, that such is life. They're still up there or thereabouts in the NA region. So this is what I mean. Do you need to win? Absolutely not. But what you need to do is you need your losing to be explained away by all this other amazing stuff you're doing. Hey, we'll go get them next time, guys. And if you create that love affair with your fans, they'll support you. They'll support you for 3, 4, 5 follow years just because the content around you is compelling. You have the right type of players, the cultural fit, and all this other stuff. And sponsors will buy into that. I know. I've managed organizations. They've told me the same thing. If you lose the tournament, go out, party, film it, and make it look rock and roll. And that's what they want.
Do you feel like at least half of the current teams had the capacity to build that type of environment?
No, because the branding is so bad.
That's my concern.
I mean, this is another problem. I look at some of these brands here, and it's like some of the names, like, well, first of all, there's criminally underused ones like Immortals, which I think is a really, really strong brand. But unfortunately, the people that bought that company could fuck up a cup of coffee. So what are you going to do, right? And then you've got stuff like, I don't know. I mean, FlyQuest, I don't know what that says to me. Like, I don't know what...
To be fair to FlyQuest, they've actually done a lot in the last year with the brand. The name is just so tragic.
Yeah, their marketing has been fantastic.
Their marketing is good, but every team has some sort of problem, right? First off,
is their marketing that good? Like, all I'm going to say is this, Monty. I don't
comparatively,
live in America, right? And
comparatively.
I, ironically, no joke, actually thought for the first year that they were like related to Quest bars because all those people were like working out.
No, their name is tragic.
And this is my point, but then they had an advertising thing where it was like, eat your Snickers, and I was like, what the fuck? That's a bit off-brand, isn't it? And then I had to look up and go, actually, it has nothing to do with that. So I think their marketing's trash. What are you talking about?
I would say that was before. I would say that right now their marketing is comparatively good because everything else is so bad. Well, they've started like go Danan, go.
That's what worries me so much. Like if there was someone we were going to point to that was like new to the league that like, oh, maybe they're going to figure it out. They're going to get it right. It's obviously been FlyQuest has turned around their marketing. Last year they turned around their competitive success. Yes. And ultimately all that ended up happening is those players fleed to TL, to C9, to TSM. Inevitably. And that's my concern where it's like, it wasn't even worth, like, when you look at it, was it even worth for FlyQuest to try to compete for like a PoE salary, presumably an Ignar salary, a Santorin salary, to keep things on the table? When they ended up second place, right? Like that was my hope. My optimism was like, this is where the league can example turning it around. And if anything, it's kind of exempling a little bit of a failed state where we're like, oh no, now like the one team that was starting to figure it out and get things in position, they obviously, Lucas was like a huge thing for them back when they got him. That was probably what literally crested them into being in this position. And ultimately that's all gone now. Like the marketing is still there and that's great. But like, do you think they're in the position where they're like, oh yeah, we should be spending a lot? I would say probably not because they didn't keep those players. But then I'm just a little bit confused where I was saying it was like awkward that they then spent the money on the C9 players. Now they're in like this weird middle ground. Like this is just a big indicator to me that we can't point to anything in this like bottom 6 teams, I guess is what you'd call it. That's like super salvageable or redeemable.
Yeah, I mean, that's my worry. Down at the bottom of the LCS in North America, you have to say the top teams in that region actually they generally do kill it with branding, do kill it with sponsors, sometimes even kill it with content, and as a result, they'll always have a fan base and always be okay, even if for one split as an aberration they finished absolutely rock bottom.
But my concern is those guys are being super vocal right now about how problematic it is, no? Like, they're talking about how they can't be competitive. Is that not a worry?
But this is like, I mean, seriously, this is like when you turn on the TV and there's some billionaire arsehole on the news telling you about how, like, minimum wage will fucking kill the whole economy and stuff like this, you know what I mean? That's what they're doing. It's kidology. They're doing fine. They're doing fine off LCS. We all know it's a mostly profitable venture, and for the most part, they're going to be okay, and this is why they care so much about League of Legends, because it's their flagship team in their organization. Put it this way, I don't think I've ever heard Nadeshot turn around and say like, oh, fucking bloody hell, League of Legends, what a terrible investment that was. He pieced the fuck out on Counter-Strike as soon as he could. As soon as the going got tough, he went, fuck this. So that's how you know. That's how you know if they're doing okay or not. Yeah, they'll bellyache and they'll gripe. It's just in their nature. But when you start looking at, and I'm going to be a bit of a prick here, so please forgive me, right? Immortals fly...
Starting now.
Yeah, Golden Guardians, I'm going to include in this.
Yeah.
And CLG. I do wonder sort of like, I think being in the league gives you a platform to provide value to your brand. And when I look at those orgs down there, I don't think you've seized that opportunity, frankly.
Well, you had extenuating circumstances, which you were pretty transparent about.
Oh yeah, I mean, we could talk about the competitive stuff. To be clear, like I'm responsible for our competitive operations. So if you guys want to hit me on roster stuff, I'm always happy to talk through that. When it comes to like branding and marketability, like yeah, I mean, arguably there's different things we could have done differently. I wasn't here for the first year, so that like original branding, not really super adjacent to it. But everything since then, obviously, I've been trying to get a little bit more involved. But I will say, like, the concern is like how challenging it is to enter that space and build up and grow. And like again, FlyQuest is exampled like doing it well, and I'm just worried it's not reaping enough of a reward, which is probably again why there's all this pressure on the league in the first place.
Sure, but let's also talk about the elephant in the room, which we're so far removed from our original point. Like, if we're horsemen, we've done fucking
tangent on the
tangent. But but anyway, let's also talk about the elephant in the room. If and I won't use you as an example, even though you're here. We'll stick to FlyQuest. That seems to be the safe whipping boy, right?
Yeah.
So. Let's say FlyQuest do kill it with the branding, do land some big sponsors, do somehow acquire some unexpected talent, and they start doing well in the splits, and suddenly fans who were sick of being called racists by demented GMs decide, actually, I could see myself in a FlyQuest jersey. Their clothes are pretty fly. I might start moving. If any of that happens, by the way, the established cartel will be cutting you off at the fucking knees, because this is another problem. The people at the top don't want to help pull you up there and grow the pie, collectively, so the pie's huge and we all get equal slices, so you end up eating more. No, they don't want to do that. This is esports. Even in a franchise league where no one can get relegated, and it's in the interests that everyone in the league succeeds to some degree, because that makes it more compelling and will put more food on the table. They don't think like that. They think about their brands outside of the league as well, and therefore they're looking to fuck you over in every little endeavor. Reggie would never allow the likes of a FlyQuest to dip into his fucking pocket.
Oh.
So if you ever do anything right, you can bet your bottom dollar he talks to the other boys he's mates with, and they talk to Riot, and suddenly there's going to be another problem or another fucking made-up rule so those boys can stay at the top. So yeah, those guys in the bottom half of the league, you're not just in the bottom half of the league in terms of ability and where you finish in place, you're in the bottom half of the league as well, in sort of almost like the fucked up network and politics you have to engage in just to be in League of Legends in the first place. So that is a huge consideration. I do empathize greatly with all these organizations.
Reggie, the kind of guy to complain about how much it hurts his arms to have to keep pulling the ladder up for everyone. Whatever.
I mean, I do think that is like the fundamental issue. But again, we can't solve any of those competitive problems within any region until there's a real union for the players, because it is illegal to implement a
Speaking
draft.
of things that none of the major orgs want in League of Legends, player unionization.
But wait, just as another point as well, though, right? I also just want to add, it doesn't have to be that way. You can break that paradigm. 100 Thieves are the proof. 100 Thieves are the proof that you, with good branding, a good org, an owner who, he knows how to run an org, I suppose. You can break into that, and then they'll have to accept you. 100 Thieves basically got them the running joke is obviously that they're an apparel company that just happens to have an esports division, and there's a lot of truth in that, and it's not even as stupid as it sounds as a strategy. And they've been able to break in and have a lot of success and sort of shake up things at the top. Echo Fox could have done it. They had a ton of problems behind the scenes in terms of their investment and money, and the fact that everyone panicked when Rick Fox came in because they thought, the cartel thought they were going to be put out, to pasture. But it can happen, and
I think,
yeah, I'll always lay it on your doorstep. If 100 Thieves can come in and do it, there's no reason the Golden Guardians can't. There's no reason the FlyQuest can't.
I still wouldn't
have to start talking
quantify
about incompetence.
I still wouldn't quantify 100 Thieves as a successful League of Legends product, though. I think they've made a product. I think their merch is successful. I think as a brand, as an influencer group, yeah, obviously, absolutely. I think if you give any other LCS team the same set of influencers, more often than not, they're going to be able to turn it into like a product, a brand that can be sold and do something.
I think the distinction here, though, Danan, is he means like that they cracked the group of like the old kings.
Oh, like trying to break in?
Yeah, basically, instead of Reggie, Jack, and Steve just trying to fuck you, it seems like they've accepted 100 Thieves as like part of their
I'm sure they tried.
Maybe,
I'm sure they tried somewhere along the line as well. I'm pretty certain.
I was gonna say, to me, it kind of sounds like maybe that's like a recent development. Then, like last year was not. Last year was an abject failure for 100 Thieves.
Well, but their first year was amazing, right?
Yes and no. I mean, in my opinion, their first year was like the short-sightedness of super volatile roster, with like a lot of super volatile personalities, recognizing that like most teams could say that they were going to be a good team, but that they weren't going to last longer than 12 months, and they made it about 9.
I mean, to their credit, though, I mean, they made a final in their first year.
And went to
right?
Worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did a bunch of shit, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I would just again point to the struggle that like they kind of broke the mold with respect to like how they spent,
Okay.
where they spent, and again, I still don't think that's like appreciated into like a valuable League of Legends product. I think right now what we're looking at and saying the successes this year did not have less than 60 days ago. Like that's literally something they purchased in the last 60 days. They effectively did an entire massive full reset. And I don't think it's like we're in the clear right now to say that they've done
Let me
it,
flip
right?
it to you and you answer it directly. Basically, Richard's premise there, so we'll use your team specifically, would be like the hyperbolic joke way of saying it would be if Golden Guardians ever succeeded, then there'd be an off-season meeting and magically just any team that has the initials GGS would not be allowed to win LCS. Like that's almost the level. That's hyperbole, obviously, but that's like what it feels like for some of the orgs that came in. I mean, there was orgs that came in with millions of dollars, you know. It wasn't like they came in and started from the bottom. Like they came in theory ready to buy the players and just compete tomorrow with Cloud9. But while some of them certainly were incompetent, there were also other factors in the industry I do think pressured some of those people in a way that when I talked about like how TSM got it all one way when it was one way and then got the other way when it benefited them as well. I don't think that happens to the new orgs to make. So what about on your end? What do you think?
Well, that's why. Well, I guess what I can point out here then is, do you feel like what 100 Thieves did was the best decision they could have made? Do you think they were offered all reasonably viable pathways and that no one stood in their way, ultimately, like in a way that you're allowed to? And then that's the roster that they manifested, right? I'm curious, like, do you think
Let's see
they
what
could
Richard
have
thinks.
had access to those
The problem
players?
is
Like,
he was the one who
could-
did the 100 Thieves example, whereas I didn't. Like, to me, 100 Thieves, as far as I can tell, is if I actually did like a big 1988 style movie scenario where I wished on the fucking machine to be an adult that owned an esports org. That's what I think 100 Thieves is like. But I want to know Richard's take on it. So that's a reference to the fucking ass right there.
That's good.
No, listen, like you can tell how successful they think the whole endeavor has been, just predicated on how much they'll talk about it. I mean, like I said, you didn't see Nadeshot saying anything about his CS team. I mean, like take for example, he was so far removed from what they were doing that when he watched them on stream and just tried to randomly re-stream a broadcast without asking anybody, right? Because he's that divorced from the lay of the land in our particular game, right? He was disappointed with his team losing to Chaos, who were like a hot and upcoming team at the time. He didn't, because he went on a world ranking, saw they were number 32, knew nothing about any of the context, and then basically said, "Man, this team sucks," and had a little weird fucked up tantrum on stream about people he employs, like, so I've never seen him bellyache or gripe about League of Legends. I've never heard him say it's not a product that doesn't bring value to his org. It's very clear, actually, based on the content they put on YouTube and the way they talk about it on their socials and the way they have influencers pulling for it, that actually they're very pleased with the League of Legends product. They have an academy as well where they're looking
I
to
still
farm.
feel like we're only observing the last 60 days, because we look at last year, they were effectively silent for the better part of like 6 months. They were really loud when they got Papa Smithy. Like they got a big influencer, they got a big talent person at the helm of their management, and they were like super visible and obvious about it. And obviously they opened their facility, so it's super easy to lean on. Yeah. But obviously, as things just started going all over the place, they tried to be transparent. They did a really good job on the content side. But again, like to me, that's not ultimately like lending credence to the success of League of Legends as a product. That was again like them leaning on one of their influencers and giving him space to like explain, and then ultimately they just undid all of it. Like all of that transparency, everything they provided, all of the lines that they drew to what they were doing, they just erased it.
I don't know if that's true. Like they still have the 100 Thieves Next going on. I know that they're very, a lot of what Papa was doing was like developing Academy and developing the step below Academy, and they have been really dedicated to that. So
I mean, yeah, I would say Kelsey's who did that, and that's who they let go.
I mean,
like that's like it's still there.
I mean, I like Kelsey obviously, but I've got no insight into what she was doing as a job and what happened there. So
yeah, that's where I
can't really comment.
They're in earnest, but like to be clear, they're fielding a roster of what 4 effective imports, and Tanner 4/5 of it's obviously our roster from last year, And ultimately, what they said they were going to do a year ago is like a far cry from what they did now. And I'm not saying it's like not okay to change your mind. I'm just saying, to me, it indicates that there's a mismatch in expectations of what they want to be seeing valuation wise out of their League of Legends division.
It's possible. I mean, my perceptions looking at it, as I do, I follow all esports. As I've got older, I'm more interested in the business rather than the games. You realize after 20 years, the games, they come, they go. But the industry remains, right?
I think we're all in that boat.
Yeah.
Mate, that's the beginning of a straight fire country song by Richard. Like, the games, they come and go. Exactly. There you go.
But esports won't say no.
I'll give you my next is that they're not even top 8 in amateur this year.
I mean, I can't lie, Richard. Just to apropos of what we were talking about before the episode, I do find there's no League of Legends World Championship finals ever going to entertain me more than D-Man selling all the fucking Riot stock right before all went a million. So you might be onto something there, mate. You might be onto something.
Just work it in again.
I'll get us back on topic actually for this.
Yeah, thank you.
I will say,
this is going to be the end, I think. Come on, let's make this like the home stretch now, boys.
Yeah, I think they made the right decision. That's actually what I was trying to get to, was I think they made the right decision. But my problem is, if the best decision 100 Thieves as like a really strong brand in the league could make was that, with an off season that includes like Jensen and it includes Santorin, it has all these players moving around, pieces moving around, and the best thing they can do is buy the Golden Guardians roster. That's an indicator of concern for me.
As in, but just because I think like the thought is incomplete. Like, as in, to you, if they're really a team in a good position, they should have been like, but going to build the best roster now.
Yeah, 100 Thieves and FlyQuest were the two teams that were supposed to example that it was happening, and then they just went the other direction.
Yes.
Yeah,
right,
but
then. What you
then.
mean.
Yeah, but then also as well, I mean, I don't know what fuckery's gone on behind the scenes.
Well, that's what I was saying. They're in the boys group, so it's fine. I was like, I mean, my concern is like.
Right. So I see what you're driving at now. I mean, here's what I'll add. Like, basically, when you sort of first come into the League of Legends space, there is an expectation you will go and kiss the ring of the cartel in North America, and I don't know if Nadeshot's done that or not. But there is that is a very real expectation, or they're going to make things hard for you, and they're going to be monitoring all the stuff you do and bitching to Riot if you step out of line about any minor thing. And, the idea that you would do that to like someone like Rick Fox is staggering to me, but that's exactly what happened. I mean, I don't know. Rick's back to acting now, and I haven't heard from him in a while. So, I don't think I'm revealing any deep secrets. He got absolutely fucked. He couldn't believe what he was seeing because he wanted to come in and be an ambassador to gaming in general. He wasn't expecting a bunch of people to literally get him, of all people, to sort of like get down on one knee and go, yes, I swear fealty to you, Lord Jack, and I will never, just please let me have a team, please. It's ridiculous. So
the maddest example, if people don't remember, was that one where, because they it was alleged they'd poached a player, every LCS team just like boycotted scrimming them for like fucking the first month or something mental of like the entire like in that scenario, that's just anti-competitive behavior. That's fuck all to do with someone's opinion. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely insane. And this is the way they can make things hard for you. Now, based on, again, I hear every rumor in every esport ever. And, I've not heard any I'm just letting people
Who are you,
know what
fucking
time
Sauron, when the ring gets put? I see you everywhere.
You better run as well, motherfucker. You better run, right? Because I'll tell you, I don't even need the ring rates anymore, mate. I just come for you direct. Believe that. So anyway, I haven't heard about any of these conflicts with these guys. They seem, by and large, to be sort of comfortable with the idea that 100 Thieves are a big brand, big influencers, and then might not be the most competitive money-wise in league in terms of how much they're willing to spend on that division. But I think they've achieved a lot of success with parts that maybe they shouldn't have achieved success with. And I think they've got that sweet spot of having, as a growing brand, you don't want to overspend too much. You have to look at them as an MGO. That's a multi-gaming organization for the people listening. And look at who actually does matter to them the most. And then you have to apportion the money proportionately. I think
I'm guessing their COD team's the big deal for them, right?
Of course it is, mate.
Yes.
I mean, Nadeshot said he weren't even going to get in on that Activision Blizzard Call of Duty League. And basically, he made them look like fucking, losers, and then he jumped in anyway when it was all resolved. It was like they weren't getting a big deal. He mad dogged Activision Blizzard. You think Jack and Reggie fucking intimidate him? So the bottom line is this: I think in terms of what they've spent, yeah, they didn't go after the big boys or the big names this time, but they're still growing. And if the fan base becomes up to the level of where their Call of Duty is, they'll start competing with those boys, and they got the clout and the money to do it. So I think 100 Thieves have actually been sensible, and probably I say it to all of the people respectfully down there: if you want to learn how to build up an esports organization that literally didn't exist 5 fucking years ago, and to get to the point they're at now, 100 Thieves is someone you want to study, not condemn.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm not condemning 100 Thieves. I'm condemning the state of our ecosystem.
Sure, I get that.
Yeah, sure.
I wasn't saying you were.
So
I feel like there should be better pathways.
When it comes to the region locking, Dane, it seems like you're on the side of keeping the region locking, kind of, changing the rules of grandfathering and residency, and then becoming the true North American League and having those rules ripple out across the rest of the world as well, because it's the only way to play this fairly, which I agree. Is that your take?
I think the most approachable would be that. I think undoing the grandfathers we have currently to change the power and the leverage of the system right now, where it's all located. But ultimately, I think if we could repeal it would be good. I just think it's just such a big challenge, and it just takes so many hoops to jump through. It's just procedurally such a nightmare. And ultimately, if there are people who are concerned, because there are people who are way better at assessing than I am, saying that this is going to ruin our identity, then I'll trust them.
So you wouldn't remove the region locking, is what you're saying. You would, in fact, double down on the original enforcement of it.
Yeah. But again, I actually find that also very difficult. I think taking away the statuses of players is super unapproachable for most of the league. If I had to query, I'm not the person at the ownership table having this conversation, but I'm sure if I posited that, it wouldn't be super attractive.
Could even be a legal nightmare, you could imagine.
Yeah,
that's why I noticed you kind of instituted a grace period, which you probably need.
Well, I think what you do is you make it contingent on when the player's contracts expire, right? So they lose, when their 3-year deal or whatever is up, that is the point in time in which they would lose their resident status, which would make actual sense to me. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that the imbalance is too severe across the world right now. And if you want to exist in a system that is a bunch of regional leagues that feed into one tournament, it has to be consistent across that system. And you can't give LCS, they already have competitive advantages compared to the other regions, period. The Korean government isn't going to go and give a bunch of Chinese people or American people or European people permanent residency in Korea, most likely. So, and I mean, they wouldn't need it anyway, to be frank, to be competitive at a global stage. But I do think that's, the advantages have already been given to NA in the fact that they already got Australia, right? And you franchised in a region that doesn't have a lot of League of Legends players compared to the rest of the world, but you knew that going in. You knew it coming into this system, and you said, we will take that risk because the sponsorship money here is greater to make up for the lack of player base and to make up for the lack of viewership, right?
Yep.
But
now not all money is created equal. So ultimately, I will say if the expectation, which it shouldn't be the expectation, but if the expectation is raised that NA needs to be in the finals 3 out of the next 5 years, then the only pathway to do that would be to repeal the restrictions. I don't agree with it, but you would have to.
I just don't see the point.
Efficacious, logically, if you want to have that, but I think
because it doesn't matter to me where the team is from that win worlds. It just matters that they're the best team. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think for me, I think the solution to this is I'd want to go backwards, honestly, on the imports and get back to what it was originally intended for, and I think that's actually a better long-term strategy if you want to care about the region. It's going to hurt you in the short term if you're a TSM or a Cloud9, but you have to believe if you fix all the other parts of the infrastructure that we've talked about over this show, it's actually going to benefit you in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And if you're not thinking long-term like that, do you even fucking deserve to succeed? So,
Are you a good partner for the league?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That Riot Games have said many times it's a long-term project.
The amount of times I ask that question hurts.
Et cetera, yeah. And so I think honestly, it'll suck. I would go so far as to say, if those people who have been grandfathered in and their contract expires, and then we're talking about revoking their status. I think if they get American citizenship or dual citizenship, I think that becomes fine then, right? That's perfectly acceptable. But Cloud9 and TSM have had a bunch of favorable rulings, let's say, and a bunch of blind eyes turned already to give them the dominance in the region that they've got. You can't give them more fucking advantages just so they have a chance to go and beat the Chinese. That's ridiculous. So,
and the only team that kept up was TL spending.
Well, and also it has to be said that other regions have made themselves more competitive over time. Europe has done a great job of building a grassroots system. The only reason that China started to eclipse Korea was because they spent years taking some of the best Korean players when they were 15 years old, putting them in China, and then coaching them. Like, the Shy was in China starting years before he even started playing on IG and won Worlds, right? And we knew he was there because when I was in Korea, the Chinese scouts were all over the ladder, bringing players to train to China and signing them to deals. It wasn't something where they snapped their fingers and overnight it happened. And that is what has been lacking in North America. Look at the viewership, guys. EU LCS used to be a fraction of the NALCS viewership. It was tiny. And now it's bodying LCS. It's like the viewership is so much bigger, and that's because you've had the infrastructure that Richard has talked about being developed for a long time. And it's
almost as if people want to see good games.
Yeah, exactly. Certainly
mind-blowing concept for people in America, I guess.
Yeah, but here's the thing: EU LCS always had better games. That was part of it, and certainly the competitive success of them winning MSI, making the World's Finals 2 years in a row. These things all helped, but also it was the product of the LEC, the compelling nature of they improved the broadcast, they improved the grassroots development system. They started to really invest in regional leagues across Europe, the Spanish league, the French league, and all of these things have led to more rookies, more personality being shown on the broadcast, as well as higher, competitive standards. And these are all things that I think LCS can take. But, it's a disservice to the LPL and to LEC to not look at what happened over a number of years that is only starting to bear fruit within the last couple of years, right? And I think that is what the demand should be. But if we have to reset it and it has to be a fallow period for top-level LCS competition, look, I'm for it. I'm for it if it means that we can allocate some of those resources. And I don't think that the region locking should be released for the entire world. I think that is, would be a very bad idea unless you were to create a super league. And even then, I'm not entirely sold on that. There are plenty of arguments not to do it. But that is the only way I could see you saying region locking is no longer a thing in LoL.
I'll just throw this in there as a final statement. Obviously, don't take it too far. I'll just say this. The problem is this. You cannot, as Riot Games, actually globally mandate how your game is run because there is a country called China who doesn't give a flying fuck what you think Riot Games. So as a result, it's all well and good saying, I'm going to have rules against poaching. Well, go on, apply that to China then. Oh, well, I'm going to have rules against match fixing. Apply that to China then. Oh, I'm going to have rules against owning multiple teams. Well, go ahead and apply it to China anytime you want then, so they don't own all the fucking teams and all the talent and move it around like god pieces on a chessboard. Meanwhile, Jack has to just have one team and then a shit academy team. Like, the problem is the rules will never be fair for all the regions, unfortunately, specifically at the moment because of where we are in history and the global influence China has, not least because they own the fucking game indirectly. So I'll just throw that out there. Like, it's all well and good us doing, like, that's what I actually prefer in these discussions. Like, an abstract, like, here's, like, the philosophical reason why I believe this, or here's what could happen. Like, it's just in reality, it's kind of like what Danan said earlier. Like, there's certain things will never change about LCS, and there's certain things about the world of League of Legends that will just never change, unfortunately, no matter how good the ideas are.
Well, that's a depressing way to end the show.
Listen, I'll always find that fucking, the rain cloud part of that silver lining and point it out to you, Monty. Don't worry about it till the bitter end, mate. Till the bitter end.
Well, yeah. Thank you, Danan, for joining us here for the first episode of the Four Horsemen. We're all thrilled to be here, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Again, if you're just
put it this way, Monty. Here's the role I'm going to play on this show, right? I once had a friend turn to me and with a really disturbed look on his face say, like, I've got to fucking find someone, mate. I don't want to die alone. And I said, technically, we all die alone anyway.
Exactly. That is the bitter truth.
We didn't have a comeback to that, did he?
Just the nihilistic approach to esports.
And then he died alone.
Although I will say that, you know.
And then I said, listen, I've got to catch the bus. Like, are you going to fucking flatline soon or what? Because I've got to get home, mate. This is getting silly now. You know, anyway, whatever.
Well, more than a decade of esports will turn anyone into a nihilist. We've all seen way too much at this point in time. It is an actual nightmare industry. But I will say, like, when we do this show in the future, guys, won't always be about League of Legends. Again, it is in response to events happening. We will do the summoning ritual on Twitter. You'll be able to find
I'm sure there'll be an owl one soon enough. Surely. That seems like that's inevitable on the horizon at this point in time. You know?
A good exercise for all the people that are thinking about, you know, partaking in the summoning ritual. Apparently, I'm told that fucking Hotline League will be on later on today. Why not compare this show to that fucking charisma vacuum?
Wow.
And see which one you prefer. Put that out there.
The purpose of this is to bring a fourth horseman like Danan on in order to get some, very unique perspective. So it'll always be a rotating guest. But we don't know when the show is going to be on. Is it going to be on every week? God, I hope not. I really hope that there isn't enough bullshit in this industry to fill a weekly show. Will it be on once a month? Probably. I think there is enough bullshit for once a month. But if you guys across your esports want to start the summoning, well, you know where to tag us all on Twitter in order for us to consider that and have it happening. This happened because this kind of spiraled out of control. But I hope we got some more depth of conversation than what was happening everywhere else, which is like, does anyone else think LCS should be the only region without region locking, as if that was ever even remotely a possibility? This is the real show for esports inside information. We all have our various information insidious tentacles everywhere in the scene. So we hear the real shit. We'll do our best to pass it along to you guys. So follow this channel, Inside on Esports, Twitch, YouTube. This is where it's going to be. And thanks, Danan, for joining us. We'll see you guys next time.
Yep.